I think most people don't know how exciting batteries are. Hey, do you like cold water? Me too. I want to thank the sponsor, The Coldest Water. This thing will hold your water cold for 36 hours or hot for 12 hours, which is pretty good. So if you want to win one of these, there'll be a link in the description. Or if you just want to buy one, there's also a link in the description. All right, Matt, I want to welcome you to the J. Garcia podcast. Matt Teske is the CEO of Chargeway, and I want you to tell me all about your company.
Well, thanks for having me. It's, so Chargeway, my background is I've been in the automotive sector for about 20 years. And Chargeway is the answer to the question of how do we help people that are not EV enthusiasts understand how to use electric cars without making them get scared.
Yeah, because charging is one of those things that, it's anxiety attached to it, right?
Yeah.
Range anxiety is because you don't know if you charge enough or your battery can't hold enough energy for you to make it from point A to point B. So, yeah, how are you guys doing that? How are you helping regular people know or get past that point where they don't understand how it works?
Yeah, well, a big part is average people, they make assumptions about how cars work because they've been driving cars for a century. They think, okay, a car runs on gas. And gas, the word they remember is something like regular or premium. That's how they understand it. And so what we found is in our research is just, people make assumptions going into buying electric cars too, which is, okay, I guess if I buy this Nissan Leaf, I can go to one of those Tesla super things, right? It's like, no, you gotta find stations for your car. And then but if I plug in at home, it's as fast as one of those super things, right? And the answer is, well, no, because there's power you have to take into consideration. So the assumptions that they can treat electricity like they've treated gas forever is part of the thing we want to help them learn quickly is what are the differences you have to know, which is essentially it's plug type and power level. And so we wanted to address that without using weird plug names like J1772 and CHAdeMO and CCS and without AC DC. Is just saying, look, your plug is now a color. Teslas go to red stations. Chevrolet Bolts go to green stations. And the higher the number, the faster the charge. So instead of trying to explain kilowatts and kilowatt hours and differences like that, it's more like playing Uno to find out where your car goes to charge and how you understand what that station does for you.
Yeah. Colors visually, most of us learn visually, right? And if you have color coded things, then you know that the red goes with the red and the yellow with the yellow or whatever. How are you guys doing that? Are you guys doing that through like an app or how's that working out?
Yeah, so it was just an idea. And it was a couple of years ago, we were at a conference, the EV Roadmap Conference in Oregon. And we said, hey, we've got this concept. And everybody really enjoyed seeing it. They said, we know this is a problem. But after meeting with everybody, which was various networks and utilities and automakers and everybody, literally, we finally said, okay, we have to develop out a platform. And so we did develop out software for a mobile app. But then we translated that same software into retail solutions. So we can deploy large touchscreens into showrooms for dealerships to say, okay, this is exactly how you use charging, and it's like a gigantic smartphone. So if someone's in the dealership, they can visualize, oh, that's how I use charging, this is how I can plan a road trip, things of that nature, and then they can download the exact same solution to their phone. And so it's this consistent visualization and messaging that everybody gets to start using. Instead of, okay, I heard this from my utility, then I heard this from the automaker, then the guy at the dealership said this, and my friend said that. We've got to get away from that. Otherwise, this is going to take a long, long time. So we wanted to create a consistent platform that could be integrated into anything digitally. So inevitably into vehicles, inevitably, obviously, onto websites. So if you're doing research or buying or owning, it's always the same thing for what you see. And then at the stations, you can just label them with the colors and the numbers. And that's what we've actually been doing that now with partners here in Oregon, Pacific Power and Portland General Electric. We have a pilot program where we launched basically saying, okay, let's work with the utilities to get the word out. Let's label charging stations they're deploying, but then let's work with auto dealers using what we call our Chargeway beacon, the kiosk, and then have people download the mobile app to see how they respond. And it's been awesome. So
it's been working out. They've been interested and they've been deploying it, and they're
So
really,
the utilities have really liked it because it helps them answer the question of how do we tell people that we're a fuel provider now? Like, how do we even have that conversation? And most of the time, utilities are going to say, well, we got to explain kilowatt hours because that's what we sell people. And they've done the research. They know they can't explain that easily to most people. And so we said, well, hey, you guys need to be speaking a language that the automotive sector appreciates, and you've got to compete with the word regular. So
yes.
how do you do that? So that's what we sought to, again, to prove. And the beauty of it is we started here in Oregon, and then it began to branch out. So we work with Avista Utilities in Washington State, and the team with Austin Energy in Austin, and as well as Indianapolis Power and Light in Indiana. And so each of these programs is effectively a pilot program where we've launched our Chargeway beacons into dealerships in the area. And then the mobile app is available nationwide. So it can start to create the conversation in each of these areas that's really tailored to people that live in that city or in that state.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So how does it work? Like, so you said the Teslas are red, and then the other ones are different colors. So how does that work out? How many colors are there, and what does that mean in the technical terms? Because I know for the most people, it's not going to be fun to talk about kilowatt hours and amps and volts and DC or AC, right? Now, there's weirdos like me and a few other my friends, basically. We like that stuff. We want to know, like, the kilowatt hours.
Included.
Yes. But I kind of get it. I'm in a similar mission to simplify things for my audience, because I have a large audience, and all day that's what they're doing. They're asking me, like, what about this? What about that? And most of the questions that I get, I'm like, you're not understanding the basic concept of electricity and how it works. I can see it through the questions you guys are asking me, right? And so I'm like scratching my head, trying to figure out how to simplify these things so that most people, the average Joe, can understand it, right? So how have you guys done that? Like, how many of those colors, and what do those mean?
Yeah, so that's the first thing we looked at. Was we said, okay, what do we have to solve? And it came down to plug type and power. And so here in North America, the colors we have are red for Tesla, and green for J1772 and CCS, so because they are a combined system, and then blue for Chatham.
And blue for Chatham.
Yeah, and so then what you then see on the software is when you choose a vehicle, it will associate a plug color with your car. It'll tell you this vehicle uses red stations or this vehicle uses green. With the Nissan Leaf, for example, it has green for standard and blue for fast charging. So instead of trying to say, okay, we're going to say AC and DC, it's like, well, people will then ask, well, what does that mean? If you tell them, hey, green is for standard charging at home with your Nissan Leaf, blue is for fast charging on the highway, that's a way for them to understand the differences quickly. And then we associate the numbers for power level within those colors to say standard charging is levels 1 and 2. We've kind of always said it that way anyway. And then fast charging is levels 3 through 7. And we categorized fast charging, DC fast charging, because you really just can't call it level 3 or DC fast, because you might find yourself at a station that's a 24 kilowatt DC fast charger, but down the street is a 350 kilowatt DC fast charger. Yeah. You got to know those differences. You can't just say, "Oh, it's fast." It's like, no, it's got segmentation in
it. it's fast, and there's really fast.
Right. Exactly. Well, and that's the part is like we actually, it was funny doing the research. Is we had a slide one time in a presentation where I said, "Okay, here are these words in order," and it said big, large, massive, and super, and gigantic or something. And I said, "Okay, can you put those in order from smallest to largest, please?" And everyone in the room just kind of laughed. They're like, "Oh, yeah, no." And I said, "Okay." And the next slide was rapid, quick, super, ultra, and hyper. And I said, "Can you put those in order?" And they went, "We see your point." Because we've kind of started naming charging in a way that we're trying to come up with good buzzwords for that it's great.
Yeah.
But in reality, we have to translate this in a way that everybody can quickly identify it, and numbers are the fastest way to do that.
Yeah. So 1 through 10 kind of thing.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah, yep. And 10's always the fastest that's available, which is about that, right? At 350, but there's literally no cars that can take 350 kilowatts right now.
Yeah, the Lucid Air, they're saying 300 in that ballpark.
Vaporware.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, the Taycan is at 270, the Model 3 and Model Y are at 250, and so those are in the same ballpark. Yeah. And what we found is once you get to a certain stage of power, if you're in that 15 to 20 minute full charge or charge to 80% to get back on the road, that's really getting down to that tight window of people can't really tell the difference.
Yeah.
But if you're at a 50 kilowatt fast charger and you're driving an Audi e-tron, that could take you over 100 minutes. Whereas if you're at 150 kilowatt, that will take you maybe, 25. That's a big difference. So that's where we wanted to figure out how do we categorize that in a way that someone doesn't have to learn all the engineering. They can just go, last time I was at a 6, that only took me 20 minutes when I needed to get on the road again. Cool, I'll use a 6.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. A color and a number is a lot easier to remember than the kilowatt hours and yeah, the rate. I do know that on the Tesla, yeah, it's a non-issue. I think once you get to a certain level, like 100 kilowatts. Once you're like at 100 kilowatts, again, yeah, you can go there, sit for 10 minutes, and then you're like, I got enough to get out of here. Like I'm tired of sitting around, or I'm in a hurry and I got to get somewhere. You're like, you just put in like 100 miles of range, right? So you're like,
Yeah.
100 miles, you usually are, you reach your destination where you're going, and then later you can deal with making it home. Oh, I'll just sit another 10 minutes in another charging station. But that's just Teslas.
Yeah.
That is well, what it used to be a really small segment, even of the EV community or the EV market. But now with the Model 3s and now with the Model Ys, I think it's becoming like one of the leaders, right? I mean, it's one of the. So now it becomes like a thing where like all the other manufacturers and all the other car models, EV models out there, those are just the tiny ones, a tiny amount of them that those are the people that are really need a lot of help because most Tesla's owners, they know they just they have there's a lot more tools I think for those, right? Because
Oh,
we
yeah.
have them in the car.
Yeah, if you're a Tesla owner, it's a lot of this is already done for you.
Yeah.
Again, it's in the vehicle. Essentially, if you're in a Tesla showroom, they can tell you like, hey, if you buy this, you can't screw it up, and I'm not lying. And you have to try to screw it up. And truthfully, because of the systems they built, how the supercharger network works, that's true. And I think that it's still interesting though, is you'll still find on owners groups and just people that are first buying a Model 3 or a Y, you'll see them say, hey, I plugged into this supercharger and it's taken forever compared to the last one I was at. And you'll look at the photograph if they share it on social media and you go, yeah, well, that's an urban supercharger.
Yes.
And immediately it's like, yeah, bro, that's 72 kilowatt. And the person's like, I don't know what that means. It just says supercharger. So in Chargeway language, that's a red 5. That's a red level 5. The red level 6 is across the street, or the red level 7 is on the highway.
Yeah, 7 miles away or something. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so just even that little differentiation will help them go, I get it. They don't need to know all the ins and outs and the bells and whistles. We had one guy tell us in a focus group. He said, look, I get what you're doing because it makes sense to me. I know that a category 1 hurricane is not going to rip my roof off, but a category 5 is way more powerful. I said, essentially, because it's too much of a moving target to try to get so specific with kilowatts. Because if you say it's a 350 kilowatt station and you hook up with your car and it's only giving you 280 because of some circumstance of weather, state of charge, or what have you, a driver that doesn't know any different is going to say, okay, is my car broken? Is the station broken? If we try to get that specific, it can actually cause more problems.
Yeah, information overload.
Yeah, totally.
There's all two numbers. Like people, I even have trouble understanding what a watt is. What is a watt? How do you explain a watt? Like, and now you're talking about thousands of watts. What does all that mean? And then like with Tesla did a great thing with their cars. I don't know how many other vehicles have this thing where like they translate it to miles per hour. I thought that was genius because you're like, at the end of the day, you don't really care about how many kilowatt hours. You're like, what does it mean? Like, am I going to be able to get home in 10 minutes or in 2 hours? What is...
Well, and that's the fun part too, is if you watch videos of people when V3 supercharging came out, and it's funny, is Tesla's already kind of doing this with how they use that vernacular. Oh, this is V2 supercharging. This is V3 supercharging. So they're already kind of doing something like that. But the videos of people, you hit it on the head, is someone films the screen and they're not screaming like, oh, dude, 250 kilowatt. They're saying, I'm at 1,000 miles per hour for charging. And it's like, that's the number that hits them. So I think that, again, Tesla has done a great job of really showing how you can build the ecosystem. With Chargeway, what we found is that we had to connect the dots for all the other stakeholders that don't already work together, like utilities. We had one guy tell us, he said, I love the idea that I can fill up at home. That's so cool. I have a garage, it's easy, but I've never owned a car that was tethered to my house. I don't want to drive half my tank off and then have to come home. Like, how do I trust this thing like any other car I've ever owned? And, then you got to go find charging away from home. But then the next question is it going to take me 8 hours like it is at home? These little things come up all the time. So we're just trying to answer that agnostically and holistically for every brand. It doesn't matter if it's a network like Electrify America or ChargePoint or Greenlots, or if it's a brand like Volkswagen, Chevy, or Nissan. So.
Yeah. Have you gotten any feedback or response from any of the car manufacturers? I know you said you were doing something at a dealership or at the dealerships. Which car manufacturer has been more appreciative or more accepting of your efforts?
We've met with basically every major OEM at this point
really?
in regards to Chargeway. Yeah, so they all know that they have to figure out the customer engagement and education part, namely because they have to educate dealers and the customers.
Yeah.
So we've met with most of them at this point. Some we're in deeper conversations with regard to just product planning and where they're taking things. We've been working alongside BMW as an example. They've been engaging us with dealerships where we can deploy our Chargeway beacon to get more testing done. And so they've been very proactive. A few other brands we're talking to just about where their product planning is down the pipeline include others like Jaguar and Ford, Volvo. And so there are always, again, conversations every single week about, okay, we've now learned what you guys discovered maybe a little bit ago, so how can we work together? And so it's our job then to paint the picture for how our solutions work for them, and in turn we'll connect them to where they sell cars regionally, which means they have to connect to the utilities. And so it's a very interwoven system for how we communicate it. And we realized that Tesla pulled it off because they have their own ecosystem. They have a moat around it. You just live in Tesla's world and you're fine. But everybody else has to live in this connected world where if you're driving one car, you want to connect to dozens of networks. And each network is trying to connect to dozens of auto brands. And so we are trying to make it so that everybody can speak a language that makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, that is really confusing. For a while, I had a Chevy Volt. I can't pronounce the V.
Volt with a V.
With a V, yeah. So, it was a great car because you didn't have to charge it if you didn't want to. You could just fill it up with gas and go, right? Yeah. But of course, being an EV enthusiast, I always like, oh, that's fine. And it was hard to understand all the networks that were out there. Like, I even till this day, I really don't know. I can't tell them apart. Which ones are the good ones? Which ones are the ones that are sketchy? I know that a lot of them suffer from stations that are broken all the time. So it would become very confusing, I think, for the average person that is going to get into an electric car. All that goes away with the Tesla, because we also own a Tesla now, and it's like, you just look in the map and there you go, right?
Oh, yeah. No, well, Tesla made it so mindless, which is what you unfortunately need to provide to the mass market. If we're talking about transitioning to clean energy, we're talking about changing the carbon footprint for everybody, but that requires consumers to shop differently for products and services. Yeah. And again, the competition that we're up against, it's not cars really. It really is the fueling experience that people have been accustomed to for decades.
Yeah.
It really is. So when people say range anxiety, I always say, well, it's more like fuel anxiety. Yeah. Because in reality, cars and gas have been like peanut butter and jelly for like the last century. We're just trying to get people to think of electric cars kind of like peanut butter and honey. It's like, okay, you still want the peanut butter, but it's this just new way of doing it, but it's not actually that different. And that's what Tesla pulled off really well. And that's what we're trying to solve for everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah, but Tesla had to spend lots of money. I mean, they went at it all alone, right? Alone, and they have so many stations within 10-mile radius of my house, there's 2 superchargers. Yeah. And I'm in Southern California, I guess, so that's just like understandable, I guess. But there are like dead spots or black holes of where like no charging is available. I noticed that you mentioned the CHAdeMO. Mm-hmm. And is CHAdeMO alive and well today, or is that kind of a thing that is going to die off soon?
I don't know about soon, but it's a great question. Is what happened recently is with Nissan announcing the Ariya, their upcoming SUV, CUV, I guess, depending on the size of it, is it's not going to be using CHAdeMO for fast charging. It's going to be using CCS.
Oh, wow. Okay, so even they are leaving it behind.
Yeah, that was the last. I think that was the last domino to fall. Because Nissan has, again, they were the pioneers of saying, okay, the Leaf is out, we got to put fast charging out there, and there is a lot of CHAdeMO stations that exist, and that's part of the catch, right? Is there's going to be a lot of legacy infrastructure that people are. Yeah, the equipment's going to be sitting there. And people make the mistake all the time where they pull up at a station thinking, I guess this will work. I don't know. And then they find themselves stranded. And so that's what we're trying to define quickly. So with Chargeway for our software, for example, is if you download the Chargeway app, Once you add your car, it just immediately shows you only stations that work for your car. It won't even let you go to the wrong one. And that's a big part of it. Whereas a lot of other apps that have existed for a long time, they really focus on, we're going to show you everything. And then you get to figure it out. And consumers don't want to shop that way. That's why Tesla kicks butt, is they just go to where you can go. And it's in the car already.
And it tells you how far it is. It tells you how, how much energy you're going to have left if you head straight out there, or this one or that one. Yeah, I mean, it's great. It's all doing all the thinking for you.
That's the part that we wanted to build into Chargeways. And we have a trip planner built into it, so you can choose any EV on the road, add it to a trip planner, and just say, I want to go from here to here. It's this. The temperature is about this many degrees outside. I want to drive this fast, and it'll calculate your entire trip using that and say, okay, here are the stations you got to stop at, and here's your estimated charge time at each one. So we really looked at the solution of how you get average people to feel comfortable, and what it boiled down to was, if it's not a universal plug type, they need to know when they choose a car, which stations work for me, and then once they know that is, how long do I got to wait at this one I've chosen based on power, and you identify that with the numbers, and then once those two things are identified, where can I go? And then you put them into a trip planner that makes them say, oh, wow, this is actually really simple. And that's how you build confidence. And that's what Tesla did, so that's what we're just trying to do for everybody.
Ah, I see. Yeah, but you guys, wow, so it's not an easy task, right? Because you have so many variables.
Yeah.
Like every car is different, and they perform different at different circumstances, depending on temperature. Are you guys taking also into account like the terrain, like if there's mountains in between and?
Yeah. So the algorithms we have built into our trip planner are conservative by design. It doesn't, like, we'll have owners that will say to us, hey, I planned this trip, but I know I can make it to this other stop and I've got like 2% charge left. And the answer is, that's true. You're an early adopter. If we handed this to Bob and Jane that don't know anything, that's going to scare them to death. We'd rather help them feel like, oh, I made this trip and the first stop I had, I was down to like 18%, which isn't as, you got to lean into a softer approach for getting people to feel comfortable. And then inevitably they might want to push it.
Yeah.
So we take into account a lot of those details. So we're not forcing people to stretch too far. We want them to feel comfortable. And the visualization of that matters, is fuel visibility. And we had one gentleman in a focus group we had, he said, well, when I'm driving down the highway, I'll see a gigantic orange ball with a 76 in it. And I'll be like, there's gas there, there's fuel there. I've never seen that for charging ever, so I don't have a clue how to trust this thing, So it's like, that's a good point, man. So that's part of the problem, is people don't know how to visualize. Most people don't even know they have a fuel choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there will be a future, where there will be signs saying like you can charge here, but we're far away from that, I think. I mean, I don't know, maybe not too far. This technology is just moving so quickly, right? That we might be a few years away where there's signs on the freeways like Chatham over here, or well, maybe not Chatham, but maybe it's gonna be red, 25 or red 3 or whatever the number is, right? Like that is. We'll be seeing instead of the name of the connector and the name of, because who cares about the connector? I mean, eventually we will reach to a standard, right? I mean, do you think there will be one charging thing, or this is too confusing? This doesn't help anyone. Like having different connectors, even these combo connectors are ridiculous. They're like this big, right? And you're like, why does it have two different types of connectors? Like Tesla got it. There's a tiny connector, can do up to 250 kilowatts.
Yep.
Like why aren't everyone copying that? Like that's just I don't get that.
You can I mean, my opinion is, you can tell that from Tesla's perspective, they looked at it and it was a very Steve Jobsian approach. Is they looked at it and said, okay, what are we trying to do for the customer to take them where we want them to go and be happy with our products? So what do they have an expectation for? We've got to make it elegant. We've got to make it simple. We've got to make it them comfortable, right? Whereas you have CCS and CHAdeMO, by example, as the other options here in North America, is they're not as elegant. They just simply aren't. And in Europe, they've really honed in on just the single standard for CCS in Europe. It's a different style of connector for the CCS we have here in North America. So in Chargeway language, we say, oh, that's the purple connector in Europe, and the one here in North America is the green connector. So that's how we differentiate it. But then in Europe, they've done a better job of that, but then you still have the communication protocols between the car and the charger. Like the Tesla superchargers, they're now using the exact same connector shape, but not all of those chargers there will work with every car. So you could pull up with an Audi,
right, yeah.
plug it in, and be like, oh, wait, it's not doing anything. And it's like, oh, yeah, it's because it's not communicating. So there's even those little things. So this is the part where there's been, I think, a lack of appreciation by a lot of the industry to really appreciate, like, okay, we're trying to get people to do things differently with their daily life. And if you throw schematic drawings and kilowatts and AC and DC at them, they will forever just opt for saying, I go get regular.
Yes.
You know, and the sales reps and dealers are going to be the same way. It's like
every gas station has the gas that I need.
Sure.
I mean, there's nothing figured out. If it's a gas station, you can fill up, right?
Yep.
I guess the closest thing to that would be like diesel, but how many of us ever drove diesel? That wasn't a thing, unless you were driving a Volkswagen, I guess.
Yeah. And what's funny, too, is we had one guy, he said to us, he goes, well, the funny thing about what you guys are doing, it makes a lot of sense because at most gas stations, diesel is just the green handle.
It's the green handle. That's
and
right.
Said,
not to do that.
Yeah.
Most of us, anyways.
Yeah, I was going to say, people can, I think that even the nozzle is a slightly different size, so you can't, I mean, I guess anymore put it in to the wrong car, but that's still an example of what was solved by the fossil fuel industries that on the electric side of the industry, there's still a lot of questions. And, you know, there's a lot of finger pointing, too, as to whose job it is.
Yeah.
It's the automakers. They should solve it. And my response is the automakers will sell cars that run on anything. Compressed natural gas, electricity, gasoline, you name it. And hydrogen. I mean, they don't care. So whatever is easiest for their customers to buy into to say, yes, the fastest, that helps them sell a car. So,
yeah. And if anything, they've shown that they're not really, they don't really care about electric cars. Like they're being forced here in California to sell electric cars for the most part. Now that they're seeing that, these are compelling products, so Tesla is outselling every single one of them in their markets or whatever, like, now they're like, okay, let's get into this sort of thing, right? But for years they didn't want to. I mean, it was pretty clear that they didn't care. Like, gas cars sell. Why should we try and sell some other cars that maybe they'll sell, maybe not? You know,
it's confusing, right? And also we were asking automakers to effectively, change their core competencies, right? I mean, they are mechanical engineer experts. I mean, like that engineering there, they know it. And if you ask them to build an electric car, I mean, sure, it looks like a car, but the guts of it underneath, it's all outside of the bounds of what they know from an expertise. And so I finally started explaining it a little bit to friends. They would say, so what's the big difference here? And why is Tesla doing so well compared to maybe these legacy auto companies? I'm like, well, Tesla answered the question that they haven't yet. If you think of an electric car kind of like a human body, you basically can say, well, what are the parts? Okay, number one is the heart. That's the battery. You know everything there's to know about that question for what makes a great battery. And if your battery is not sound, if it doesn't have high energy density, if it can't accept power and release power well, then it's going to be kind of a weak system. And so that's at the core. And then the next step is the software, which is kind of like the nervous system. If you don't have a good nervous system, you might have a body that's pumping with the heart, but it doesn't matter. So the car's got to have great software. And then the next step is the blood, which is the electricity. If you're not getting the electricity into the system that allows it to really function and move and take advantage of all those things, then it's not going to, again, it's going to be a dead body if there's no blood. So Tesla answered all those questions super well, but then you get to the skin and bones of the body, and you go, well, that's manufacturing for the actual car itself. And that's where Tesla has areas where they need to improve.
Yeah, they had issues. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that's where the automakers that have been building cars forever can say, hey, we kick ass at manufacturing the physical cars. Yeah. So that's
I never thought about it that way, but you're right. We're asking them to do a car that the main components are things that they're really weak at. Like the battery, they have a 12-volt battery, it's like a 100-year-old technology. And then software, most of them, their software sucks, right? Like even the infotainment, it's like so outdated. They're never really invested so heavily into the software system. So, and that's what electric cars need. And yeah, of course, I guess it would make sense that they would struggle for a while and they would be hesitant to not make them.
Yeah. Well, and then that means if they make one, they probably, either if it was compliance or if they just kind of cobbled it together, they still don't know how to market that really. So they basically do it under a compliance umbrella and say, okay, we did this here. And then people ask, well, why are they not marketing these cars more? I'm like, they don't know how to explain this thing to even their dealers.
Yeah.
They don't. So they just go, hey, look, somebody's going to walk in here and know everything about this car.
Yeah.
Just sell it to them,
Sell it
you
to
know?
'em.
And
Just
so-
don't be a dummy and try to outsell the, sell the other, because there's so many of these accounts. I'm one of them where I went in there and they absolutely knew nothing about it, and I'm like, sell me the electric car, and they're like, which one? I had to tell them which one, and I'm like, why is it? It was not charged, so I got to do a test drive with a gas. I'm gassing because
Awesome.
it was discharged.
Floor it, man. Man, this is really great.
So, and they were always trying to upsell you, like,
Yeah.
oh, well, we could have the cruise over here. It's like there's so many of those accounts where they're trying to sell you the thing that they know about. They're like, I don't know nothing about that one. I'm not trying to push it on you.
No, exactly it. And there's, as you said, there's so many examples of people who have done like a secret shopping to see how it goes, and it's always a train wreck. And what's funny is if you really think about what they're actually trying to explain, they know how to talk car. Like, oh, hey, this has Bluetooth, this has leather seats, this has chrome, whatever. That's their forte. But if you ask them to explain the thing that they don't understand, it always comes back to charging.
Yeah.
It always comes back to the thing that they don't sell. And what's bananas is electric utilities have been trying to fill gaps around the U.S. with that. And a lot of utilities have been trying to say, well, if they're not going to market the cars, we need to. And so you'll see a lot of utilities that go out of their way to really sell electric cars.
Really, they have an interest now in cars because they use their fuel essentially.
Well, right, but then you just said it, is people still don't fundamentally understand they have a fuel choice.
Yeah.
So the utility is trying to get them to buy cars, and I've got buddies who have said, I don't understand why my utility is showing me car stuff. Like, I don't get it. And the answer is, so a really cool Ford study that happened about a year ago before the Mach-E unveiling is they did a survey of non-EV owners, and when they asked the question of how do you fill up an electric car, 42% of people said, oh, with gas. And you go, almost half the people they talked to said, fill up an electric car with gas? You're kidding, right? And it goes to show that people simply don't realize that, yeah, they see car, they think gas. So we have to help them understand when they see car, they have a question, gas or electric, because they need to know about fuel choices.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, and like, I don't know. I don't know anyone that actually loves going to the gas station, right? That is the thing that's universally hated, right? Like,
I don't like it. I think what's funny is most people accept it because they grew up with it. It's just been ingrained in life. But they don't want to do it. It's annoying.
It's always when you're late.
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
always when I don't have 5 minutes to stop. Oh my God, there's 3 cars.
It's
like I used to love going to the gas station with my Chevy Volt because it literally has like a 3-gallon gas tank, and it was like you put the thing in there and you're like, oh, done. I'm like, let's get out of here. But it happened so rarely because I was always running on electric on that thing. But if the time that I had to, like we used to travel with it, that was a great thing about that car, that you could go, like, let's go to where did we go? Vegas. Let's go to Vegas. And so you'd have to fill up. But I didn't mind because it was like, oh, I'm in and out. Like, literally, like, almost as soon as I'm putting the thing, it's full. And you're like, where every other car that we had before had a huge tank, and you just have to sit there. I mean, after like 60 seconds, 2 minutes, you're just like, okay, come on. Or you're forgetting about it. You're going and checking your messages, but then you get to see the signs that says you're not supposed to be on your phone.
Oh, yeah, yeah, exactly. Touch your card and, like, kill the static connection or whatever it is.
Yeah, and then you're nervous. Yeah, there's a lot of bad things going to the gas station. I don't miss it at all. I've been not going to the gas stations for 7 years, so I'm good. No, but I think most people don't get that you could literally not ever have to go to the gas station. You just plug it in at home, and you should be fine. If you get a car that has enough miles that gets you around. Mm-hmm. And how long does it take? 30 seconds. How long does it take you to plug the thing? Because essentially that's...
It's funny. That's one thing that I think can be a little bit misleading, is if you say, oh, it takes me 30 seconds to charge my car, and people go, whoa, that's crazy. And you say, wait, I plug it in, then I go inside and I do my thing, and I wake up in the morning and it's full.
It's gone, yeah.
And they go, well, wait a minute. Then it takes me 30 seconds to fill up my car with gas because I swipe my card and put the nozzle in, No,
but you have to wait there for 5 minutes and then...
Well, but the 5 minutes they wait, they have a full tank. And that's where they think of it in total. And so I found that out the hard way with trying to get some of my buddies on board when I used to say, no, it takes like 10 seconds. Just plug it in when I pull in my garage. And I had one of my friends go, yeah, dude, but what's the total time?
Yeah, but you only care about that if you need to leave in the middle of the night to go do something else. If you're not leaving till the next morning, you really don't care. Do you care if it takes, like if your phone is charged in 10 minutes or in 2 hours? Like, it doesn't matter. If you're going to sleep, right? You just plug it in. It's done.
Well, that's a consumer psychology switch, right? Is getting people to go, oh, I'm totally cool doing that. And so that's where the smartphone analogy comes in a lot. Where, hey, you put your smartphone on the nightstand, you plug it in, when you wake up, it's always ready, right? And it's the same kind of a concept, but then people still get confused about, well, it's not a smartphone though, it's a car, and they just always get back to the gas experience. Yeah. And so there's a legitimate concern if you have to charge it during the day. Oh, totally.
Because then it's like, it's not 30 seconds, it's 6 hours or 8 hours or whatever it is.
Well, if you're at a level 2, yeah. But then that's like for Chargeway, we would say, yeah, but you're driving a car that's a level 5 car. Go find a level 5 station and you can go grab lunch and be done.
Yeah.
And that's when they can go, oh, then they start to equate something like that. Because you just described it really well, is how do they know where it fits in their use case of their life? Yeah. And then what option will fit with that use case? So at home, yeah, that's a level 2. If you're on the highway, well, if you're in the middle of nowhere and you're on a 5-hour road trip, yeah, you want to be in and out probably in, if you're stopping for lunch, maybe 30 minutes or less. That's like a level 6 or higher. And so then they can start to understand those icons of like, well, got to find a 6 if I want that experience. But if I'm going to a movie, that's like 2.5 hours. I could probably find like a level 3 or 4, and that's cool.
Yeah. So how are you getting all your data? Because you obviously need to have a lot of data to populate your app, right? To be able to, where stations are at, how many of them are. How are you doing that? Where are you pulling all that data from?
So the base data that we get is from the alternate fuels database from the Department of Energy. And it's got all the major network data in it for the most part. And then we add in content related to what we get from individual APIs from other networks. So if we get an individual API from a network, we can then say, okay, we don't need to use that data from the alternate fuels database. We've got a direct connection now to that network. Some of the networks,
which is more reliable?
It's just more accurate. There's more data. The data that's being provided to the government, there's a lot of information, but not all the information. Like real-time status, is it available? Is someone using it? Things like that. That's a big one. But for the most part, it's pretty solid. And then obviously we get feedback from drivers as to updates to non-network locations. If it's a hotel or a bed and breakfast or a winery, it's like, hey, I want to add this one in. We can add it to our systems. So it's a combination of, we don't really fully rely on crowdsourcing because we've already kind of graduated into, we're trying to get to mass market. So the networks have done a pretty good job thus far. I mean, there's over 30,000 public charging stations in America.
Wow.
So people kind of go, I've never seen one. And that, yes. That's the problem, is it gets back to fuel visibility. Like, where's the signage? Where's the thing that makes it easy to...
It's in different places too, right? Like a lot of them are like in parking lots, in the mall, at the theater. So it's not in the same spots. It's not like in the corner of intersection or something. So,
no, that's it. I mean, a gas station is the size of like, the corner of a city block or something, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what people, again, we're asking them to change their understanding of how cars work. And so they expect to see, I can find my fuel because it's so big I can't miss it. But we're asking them now you get to go find a needle in a haystack in a parking garage. And that makes someone nervous. And so we need to really appreciate that. And that's where, again, Tesla did a very good job of saying, well, we'll just make it so that you really can't screw this up by making it built into the car. Yeah. When you show up, it's got our brand logo on it the size of your arm.
They're being on that screen, on the center console screen, it's invaluable. I mean, it's every car should have that. Like, your app should be in every car. Is that too far into the future where it's going to happen?
That's the vision we have, is that it would be utilized that way. To say, once you get into the car, again, kind of the work we do with utilities and working with their local dealerships, it's really meant to showcase that we can prove that in a shopping experience, someone who's going to buy an electric car, let's say in Portland, chances are they do have the option to fill up at home. They can go home and plug in. but you want to get away from the early adopter. You want to get that person that says, yeah, I can do that at home, but I got family that lives in Sacramento, or I got family that lives in Montana. How do I do that? That's where you bridge the gap of the fuel visibility inside the showroom. So we've created the narrative and the use case and the proof of concept to say, you can visualize this easy. Now let's put it where it needs to be inside the car. And if there's a mobile app that goes along with your vehicle, you can integrate it there as well.
Yeah. So now that you have all this data, so you have a feel for what is lacking in certain areas. Like, let's say, I like what's lacking, for example, in Southern California. Like, if I were to ask you that, would you know? Would you be able to tell from the info that you have on your app?
Well, we can certainly look into what we have from a footprint, and again, a lot of the data that we are pulling in is useful data from the database coming from the government. But how we visualize it actually helps take another step for what you're trying to show people, which is, okay, we can call it DC fast charging, and there's a lot of it in Southern California, but there might be better applications for different types of DC fast charging in different places. And so that's certainly something that our systems can showcase very easily and quickly to someone who needs to get a sense for, where do we have a problem? There's still a lot of places for, we say that you can charge at home all the time and it's easy, but 50% of the US, they rent. And so they still have to go find their fuel. And level 2 charging it might work for them at work, but did they have a workplace that offered that?
Probably not.
Again, these are things that utilities are all trying to figure out of, how do we help people in a multi-unit, like an apartment, have a bunch of level 2s. And then there's a bunch of regulation behind different things along those lines for development work. And so there's all the red tape that makes it so tough. And so these are things that, again, average consumers, they don't care to think about it. They just want someone to solve the problem.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that's a thing, because like I'll keep bringing that Chatamo example. So I convert electric cars, right? Like DIY electric cars. And so we're really excited that for the first time we could do a DIY that can fast charge.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, oh yeah, we have the controller, there's someone that makes it, they have the thing, they usually take a plug from like a rack Leaf or something, and so then we're all excited about it, but then the more we keep talking to people, it's like, oh yeah, but like there's not that many plugs in Southern California. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So I go looking around for them, and I'm like, you're right, the only plugs in Southern California around my area are literally at the Nissan dealers. Right?
There's a lot of Chatamo, like blue fast charging in Southern California. There's tons.
Not in my area. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong map, but all the ones that I can find near me are just basically, most of them are the dealers. And I thought, well, those are not really ones you can go and plug in your BW bus, right? Because they're going to be like, what? Get out of here. It's like, this is our charger.
Right.
So I'm like, that means they're practically like non-existent in my area. Right. So then I'm like, maybe that's not the way to go. And in fact, we're like now saying like, maybe we don't want to go that route.
I don't blame you for questioning it. I mean, namely because if Chatamo is arguably on the way out, but it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, the honest truth is we're going to have, my opinion is we're going to have legacy charging stations that have Chatamo, the blue fast charging connector. We'll have those in the ground and still functioning for years to come, because there's a lot of Nissan Leaf owners, Mitsubishi i-MiEV, the Kia Soul EV. There's a lot of vehicles that utilize it. The RAV4 for conversions for RAV4 owners when that was done. So this isn't going away overnight, but I would say that, again, what you're describing about where can you take this conversion you've done to use a Chatamo, that's where, again, something like, I would say with Chargeway, it's like, if you want to know where those are, you can add a Nissan Leaf and see where all the blue dots are in your area.
Yeah, so the reason why, one of the reasons why I was questioning that is because we had someone that it's involved in installing stations, right? Like, not just like local for businesses, but like even for municipalities and stuff. So I go, so what are those looking like? Like what are most of these having? And then I go, is any Chatamo in there? And they're like, yeah, it's like most of the ones we service, we're not putting in a lot of new ones. He goes, in these stations, there's like, CCS combo, like, 20, 30 stations, and then like one Chatamo, and then, so it's like, oh, that's the ratio? I go, okay, maybe that's telling of what the future is going to look, like.
Yeah, I'd say that's the ratio for one network in particular that is
doing
okay. Installations.
Oh, maybe. Okay, so maybe he knows of that one particular network.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe he only works with one aircraft. I didn't ask him that question because I didn't think about it.
Yeah, like networks like Green Lots, EVgo, Charge Points. When they put in the station, they still do have both a green and blue fast charger, and so they have both options. The network Electrify America that's growing out very quickly from the Volkswagen money that came to pass from Dieselgate, they've built like 600 locations in the last 2 years. They're moving fast, but at those locations, the predominant amount of fast charging connectors that are there are green, and there's always one blue. So
and there's only one blue,
yeah.
Which is
that's
the blue
Chatamo.
one? That's Chatamo.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what he's involved in. Yes, because that's what he was explaining, and so I walked away from that podcast going like, wow, hell, like Chatamo's it's on his way out. I mean, like if they're putting 1-30 ratio or 1-20, he was saying like we're putting multiple. Many of the CCS combo, but only like to one Chatamo, and sometimes not even one. He goes. And sometimes we're doing a lot of, because they also service some of these stations, some of these locations, right? And so I go, okay, so that tells me that maybe that's not the right way to go with our conversions.
It's a tough one because I mean, arguably CCS is going to be the dominant charging connector moving forward. Let's say for argument's sake that Chatamo was officially it was decided somehow to say, okay, it's done. We're going to get everything off the road that has a Chatamo. We're going to make adapters for CCS or God knows what. Yeah. That could happen. And I think it will probably keep going that direction. And it should, frankly, for consumers.
There should be one plug instead of many.
Yeah. But Tesla, I honestly do not foresee, in North America at least, I don't foresee that they're going to, out of nowhere, be like, yep, we're switching to CCS as well. Namely because they've invested a lot in their superchargers. Now, they can adapt it like they did in Europe. But, I mean, I'll be honest, like you described, is that if you use a Tesla fast charging connector and then you go and use a CCS or Chatamo, there's a difference in the experience for how elegant Tesla's design is. And I think owners would be pretty up in arms if all of a sudden they said, hey, we're switching this up. But some would actually totally appreciate it. They would say, awesome, thank God. Now I can go to any damn station. So,
Do you think someone... I don't think Tesla will change to someone else's. I think... Well, I mean, Elon said that he's open to any other manufacturer that wants to use it. You just have to pay in, right? And of course, the price keeps going up, I bet, because there's more and more stations every month. Yeah. And the spec keeps getting better. I mean, now 250 kilowatt, right? Yeah. Do you see a future where like other manufacturers are going to jump in that, or they're all going to stick with CCS combo?
Honestly, I mean, I mean, no crystal ball, but because it hasn't happened yet, there's got to be a reason for that. Aside, I mean, I don't even know if it's ego. I mean, I don't know, but it's a lot of manufacturers. I mean, again, everybody looked at Tesla as if it was a joke. I mean, everybody did. I mean, they wrote them off, and here we are, they were founded 17 years ago. And so here we are kind of going, well, it wasn't a joke, but to your point, like, they've got this option that they offered up to saying, hey, we want to help accelerate everyone else. You guys can use this. And frankly, I think a lot of the manufacturers that had partnered in the past that were legacy auto brands from both Europe and North America, those relationships already existed. And I think that they just felt, well, we know what we're doing in this space too, and we can develop out a solution. And they have it. I mean, CCS is still a great option. It frankly can be a higher powered option than Tesla in the long run.
But the specs are there. The specs are there, but it's just there's no car that could use those specs anyways.
Right. I mean, it's gonna get there, but it requires so much to charge at those power levels too to get up to that 350 kilowatt. And I think that's.
Is there stations that could actually spit that? I don't think they exist.
Yeah.
I mean, do they have the transformers and able to support that? Because I know the spec can support it, but that doesn't mean that every charger is going to put out that, right?
Oh,
like
no,
levels 2.
Yeah, that's the catch, right? Is what do you have that can offer that? So this is where you get into the granularity of the technical details. Like a Tesla supercharger is on a shared circuit. So if someone hooks up on the same circuit as you, boom, your power drops. But at a V3 supercharger or level 7, as we'd call it in Chargeway, that's a dedicated circuit. You hook up.
That's a level 7?
Yeah.
Oh, V3, it's a level 7. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, and Electrify America, they've got level 7s that are green connectors all over the country. And it basically, as near as I know, at every single fast charging station they have that's on the highway, each one of those has at least 2 level 7 connectors. but it might have up to maybe 5, 6, or 7 level 6, which is more like 150 kilowatt.
Okay. Which is fast enough. I mean, that is fast charging. Wow, that's crazy. I don't know if it's gonna happen. I hope so. I mean, two different networks is not too much.
Yeah.
Right? That's regular or unleaded. Or
there you go. Yeah. No,
but any more than that, I think it's too much. I think so. If it's Tesla and it's like CCS combo, and if they redesign that CCS combo, because I don't really know why does it have to be so big. Do you know? Because I don't know why.
Well, honestly, that's the part of it too. Is I think what happened is they had the J1772, which was the AC connector design that had been, again, that's from SAE. They said this is it. This is what we're using, and to develop out a DC element that was not a completely different connector like Chatamo, they had to figure out how to take advantage of what they had developed. And so the communication pins inside of the J1772 were utilized alongside adding in those DC pins.
Those DC pins. But what that did is that it made a giant connector.
Freaking huge, yeah.
It's giant like this, and it's like, I never used it, right? I've never used it, because I never had a car that has ever used it. But it didn't seem like it's fun to do. Like, it seems like you'd have to wiggle it, plug it in there. And like the door, which cars have it? Like, they have a huge door. There's some cars that have both, right? What's it?
Both CCS and Chatamo?
No, I think there's one that has, what does the Leaf have?
Oh, so the Leaf, that's a good example, is it has J1772 for AC and then Chatamo for DC.
Yes.
And so when you flip the charge door on a Nissan Leaf, you physically have 2 ports.
2 connectors, yeah. And it's just, you're just like, whoa, what is that? You know?
And then in our world, we go, okay, the little one, that's standard, that's your green one. And then the big one, that's your fast one, that's your blue one. And they go, oh, okay, instead of going, that's a J1772 7.2 AC kilowatt connector.
Yes.
Someone goes, I gotta go.
Yes. Wow, that's crazy. But I mean, I guess I hope so. I hope we have 2 at most, and then they redesign that connector, because that it's ludicrous.
If they redesign that connector again, then you've got a lot of legacy vehicles on the road using the CCS connector.
Oh,
then
that
you've got
won't work.
All these stations. That's the tough part. Is gasoline required a round hole and a nozzle that could just pour a fluid, whereas when you're talking about electricity, it has to connect physically, unless you're talking wireless. But wireless isn't going to get up to 350 kilowatt.
Yeah, no, and I hope they don't, because that's crazy amount of electromagnetic, radiation. Like, I don't want that kind of, wireless charging going on.
Yeah.
Underneath me, and at home, I don't know. I don't know if that technology is feasible for those sort of power levels, right?
Yeah, that's speculative at best. I think that, again, we get into things like battery swapping too. Is people say, well, why can't you just swap a battery? Mm-hmm. And you can. NIO has proven it in China. A Better Place was doing it in the Middle East. Tesla obviously showcased they could do it. They even had the facility on I-5 where they even were piloting it. But let's be honest, if you're going to store, let's say for sake of argument, 30 battery packs in the ground, the amount of capital required to just build those battery packs and have them physically sit there is a bunch. Yeah. And then you've got to go, okay, that's a lot of materials, that's manufacturing, that's all these things, and they're just going to sit and hang out. It makes much more sense to go about the refilling approach than it does to just replacing the battery. And the only argument for replacing the battery is just for speed of fill-up. But once you get to a place where it's like 15 minutes...
Yeah. Yeah, so it's the same thing with like the car's battery size. People are like, when are we going to get 500 miles? And you're like, you don't want to carry all that battery on board. Like, that's a ridiculous thing to do, right? Like, you'd rather just have faster filling stations, because like if every 250 miles you pull up, you can charge in 5 minutes. Then you don't. Why would it would be a waste of a waste of battery to just be carrying it around.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's all that material. I mean, everything that's inside of that. I mean, again, you know better than anybody. When you really think about what makes those batteries what they are, that is a lot of wasted resources just to sit. Whether that's inside your car, I've got a 1,000-mile battery, and when was the last time you used it?
Yeah.
And I mean, so
it's like once a year, maybe. The average person like probably once or twice a year to go on a trip.
Yeah, but the people that buy vehicles with that kind of like 0.001 use case of like zombie apocalypse or whatever is, I don't want my electric car to only have 180 miles of range. It's got to have 400 because then I feel like if I really had to run and I was fully charged, I could get to somewhere, and you go, okay, sure.
The crazy thing, that was a crazy thing to be prepared for. But then 2020 happened and you're like, hey,
seriously.
Maybe you should. What do they call them? Bug out vehicles or like
bug out? I know that's a good phrase though. Yeah. What is it? What's that matte black thing in the corner? Oh, that's my bug out vehicle, man.
Yes.
It's always charging. It's fine.
When everything hits a fan, you gotta get out of town. Yeah.
No, it's so weird how that's again, but we're conditioned as kind of as a society and as people, we buy for those weird use cases for things like that. And EVs, in general, I mean, until Tesla was really doing what they were doing, they didn't fulfill those use cases. And I think people still are speculative about that. So range in their mind makes the most sense because they don't fundamentally understand fuel visibility. I mean, people that work at any like Tesla location can say stories like, yeah, someone came in and said, yeah, I'll buy it, but when the battery runs out, do I just throw the car away? I don't get it. And you're going, no, you just fill it up. It's just a car. But they just don't understand fuel choice. Yeah. It's just crazy. So.
Wow. So how long have you guys been doing this? How, like your company's been developing this app? Is it out for customers to use it now?
Yeah.
It's being,
Chargeway is available on iOS and Android today. It works nationwide here in the U.S. We're going to be adding Canadian data hopefully by the end of the year. And but we've been working on it. So the initial presentation to the industry to say, hey, we've got an idea was about 3 years ago. And we spent at that point about a year and a half basically meeting with people, understanding what the needs were from an automaker, a network, a utility, dealerships, and also just drivers, and just said, okay, so what do we need to build? And so we approached building a software platform. And then from there it was, how do we start testing this in the way that we think it can work for all these different groups? And so that's what we started doing basically in early 2019 was our pilot programs with Portland General Electric and Pacific Power. And it engages, we've got Chargeway beacons, as we call them, in dealerships in Oregon. Kia, Hyundai, Chevrolet, BMW, they are all now using Nissan. They're all now using beacons here in Oregon. And the response is universal that all the dealers are like, this is what we've needed for a decade. Like, we've needed this type of a tool to just bring it down to earth so that if an average person walks in here, we can say, it's not complicated. I will show you real quick how you can picture where your fuel is. And let's plan a road trip to grandma's house. And all those different details are built into it. So we just wanted to answer the questions that every single person was getting, whether it was a dealership, a utility, you name it. So the growth for us now is we're expanding here in Oregon, and we've got programs going, as I mentioned earlier, in Texas and Indiana and Washington. And we're talking to other utilities in other states, California included, on the East Coast, New York, other places. So we're expanding into other markets as fast as we can. The next step after that is we're getting the interest from the automakers who are saying, well, we've needed a trusted partner to answer these questions about electricity. We haven't had those answers. And so we really kind of fit right in the middle of that conversation, which is you could fill up at home with your utility, which if you can, it's like 90% of your time is going to be that. Yeah. But if you can't, you need to go find your fuel. We answer both those use cases for every driver. And we connect the automotive sector and the energy sector in a way that makes more sense. So about 3 years now, the idea for Chargeway came from an experience that I had with our first electric car, which was a Chevrolet Volt with a V. Yeah. I called a resort where my wife and I were staying for our anniversary, and I said we had our Volt for I don't know a few months maybe, and I just said, hey, so do you guys have charging stations? And girl on the phone said, oh yeah, you can charge your electric car here. Great. And so we showed up, and I was checking in, said, hey, we need to plug in our car. And she kind of looked around and went, let me go get our maintenance guy. And he walked us out through the parking lot to a wooden shed where there was like a little outlet. He like flipped up the 110 outlet and was like, here you go. And I was just like, holy crap. And so, I convinced my wife we had to buy this car and everything. So she was very polite about it. And luckily it was a Volt. We had gas as a backup, but I was like, this is terrible. And so I was at dinner with her that night, and she goes, out of curiosity, She's like, you're a car guy. And I was like, yes, I used to call myself that. Yeah. And she goes, well, if you couldn't figure this out, how would I do this? How would anybody else do this? And I was like, that's a very fair critique. And so that was, 2013, 2014. So the original idea about we got to solve this is that old. And I started developing a basic concept around simplification around then, but I had to really understand the engineering better. And that's what I spent, a few years really just sitting and researching was I want to sit in a room with an engineer and explain to them how I can answer their questions about how we explain this with colors and numbers in a way that still fits in their world, but also help them appreciate that's how we get more people to do it.
So. Yes. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, like I said, to me, it comes second nature because I look at this technology from the technology side of it. Yeah. But for the average person, they have zero interest in knowing what a kilowatt hour is, what a volt is, none of that stuff. And they shouldn't. They shouldn't have to know all this stuff. Because, usually sometimes you'd be like, whoa, just learn it, But you're like, they shouldn't. They should just be able to understand where to plug it and which one it is and how far they're going to go. Like, that's what they need to know, most people, right?
And that's essentially how you just described Tesla. They removed all the complexity so they can call it things like supercharging. Oh, it's in the city? That's an urban supercharger. Yeah. I mean, so they can get away with it because of how they built their systems, but everyone else has to play together. And the consumers are in the middle of navigating all that. And to your point, most people are going to go, I don't know how that works. We did a survey with people, asking about what their understanding was for just gas. And we'd say, hey, when you go to the gas station, what type of gas you get? First word that comes to your mind. And it was 72% of people use the word regular. Another 21% use the word premium. So over 90% of people could use just two words and they knew how to fill up.
Yeah. But and it's usually like expensive cars use premium. Yeah. Everyone else uses regular.
Right. The guy that has the Rolex, he's like, oh yes, my Bugatti uses premium.
Yes.
So, but they knew that simple thing. But then if you ask them things like, oh, do you know what octane number you use? They just
what is that?
I don't know. We had people guessing left and right.
They don't even know how many miles per gallon their cars get. I think that's just like a small subsector of the population know that, right? Like,
they know the needle just goes to E after a while, and they just go, I gotta find gas.
How many miles did you get? I don't know. We just went a week.
Well, no, truly, it's that superficial. It's so crazy. And what we finally found out in our research about the gas side of it is, truthfully, for like the last 50 years, at every gas station, it could have been cherry, apple, banana. They don't understand the details. And so we wanted to be able to prove that through research and data to then talk to the industry to say, look, you don't need to explain kilowatt and CHAdeMO and J1772 and volts and amps. You don't have to do it. They don't want to learn it.
Yeah.
You just got to give it to them so simple that, okay, colors and numbers, and that's really as far down as we can break it down unless we get a universal plug type and we somehow break physics and we're charging at 500 kilowatt everywhere. So,
yeah. Well, no, it's a good thing that you're doing. How many members do you have usually on the app currently?
Oh, we have thousands of members nationwide now, and most of which are in the areas where we've done our work with the utilities.
Oh, I see.
But what we've really done, we really wanted to cross our T's and dot our I's really well. We haven't just carpet bombed the world with marketing saying download Chargeway today. We really want to keep getting the right feedback to know that our hypothesis and then the solution we created really is answering the questions that we found in our research. And thus far, it has proven to be the case. We still have people that compare us to other apps that have been out there for a long time, like PlugShare and a few others, but we didn't seek to replicate other apps. We approached it completely differently. And so people that are looking for that hyper granularity and all those details, if they're asking for it from us, our response is we didn't build the early adopter app. We built the app and the software
for the mass market.
Yeah. So that's kind of tough because for the most part, we're still in that early adopter world. But we're looking to bridge the gap, and so it's sometimes we recognize we're floating in the middle a little bit, but we have to focus on where we want to go as opposed to trying to just keep making everybody happy that has wanted all the details like you described of the amps, the volts, and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, you could find those out. I do know that I know the early Teslas used to give us more details on the battery and those stuff, and then that kind of went away. And I know that because most of the Tesla owners at the time were early adopters, we were all up in arms, right? Like, oh, come on, why don't we know that? Why aren't you specifying how many kilowatt hours does a battery have now? Yeah, because they didn't even tell you that. They don't even tell us how much energy a battery holds now.
Oh yeah, well, I was on a call one time. We were talking about this, and there was a few. It was with a network, and there was a few of the product planners on the phone, and we explained how Chargeway worked. And at the end of it, this one guy said, he's like, again, where's all the kilowatts? Where? How do they know that? And I was like, again, they don't need to know that if they're going to go mass market. And there was a guy on the phone who just casually mentioned at the time. He goes, well, Tesla just recently dropped using the number to identify their cars. They just call it like long range now.
Yeah.
And the whole call just got quiet, and the people were like, wait a minute, what? They did?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. And again, to your point, a lot of people were like, hey, that's part of the passion we have is the details.
Yeah.
But as you've described, but most people don't understand it anyway.
It's like it's a huge difference between the early adopter like Model S owners and now all the Model 3 owners.
Oh, totally.
You could tell that it's just Model 3s are just regular people. Yep. It's weird that we haven't seen more videos of them trying to fill it up with gas. As I think that one lady, I don't know if you've seen this video where there's a lady trying to fill up a Model 3, a Model S. I think that was staged. I don't believe that to be real, right? But I think it probably happens often. It probably daily it happens with Model 3 owners because those are just regular folks that they're just like, my neighbor has this cool car. Let's go buy one, and then they don't realize for the first week they're like, wait, how do you?
It's like magic, right? This thing keeps going down. What does that mean when it goes down? It's funny, as you were describing that, it again just makes me think of the fact that experience we're talking about, then it's not about car education, it's about fuel education.
Yeah.
It's totally, again, it's funny, I mean, I'm a bit of a broken record when I get a chance to chat with people about it, but it's so true that Tesla solved that problem about making the fuel not scary. And they coupled that with amazingly fun products. I mean, and by fun, I mean, it's just people talk about it. Oh, my car has fart mode. It's like, okay, who cares? But it's something that people chat about. It's kind of quirky. But the other features like over-the-air updates and things like that, people go, well, that's actually kind of neat. I do like that. And they just don't concern themselves with the filling up part because the car just does all the thinking for it.
Just does. It's amazing. Even like, this car right here, it's my bus, right? And I converted that 7 years ago. And I've traveled with it. I've taken it to, over state lines, to Lake Havasu and stuff, which is like, it's under 300 miles, right? But that was a major achievement, I remember, because I had to like basically go and then park halfway in an RV park and then plug in. And then, 7 hours and you're like, wow, let's go to sleep. I mean, we're going to be here in the middle of the night, right? And then you get up the next morning and then you like drive away, right? So that's been my reality with electric cars. It's like around town, no problem. But traveling, no, that's a major issue, right? Now with the Tesla, like the other day we went to Joshua Tree. And Joshua Tree, for those who don't know, it's about as remote you can get here in Southern California. It's like you can, like this way there's like 100 miles, this way is like 50 miles, that one's like 30. You're like as far away as you can get within, staying here locally. And the crazy thing is that we're there with a Tesla and I'm like, people don't get the amazing thing that this is. Like I literally don't have to worry about where I'm going to charge because within 50 miles of here, there's a supercharger. Right? And all I need is like 10, 20 minutes and then we're good.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, my wife and I, we did a road trip we have a Tesla Model 3 and a Chevrolet Bolt. And we took our Model 3 from Portland to Crater Lake. And she was talking to one of her coworkers after we got back from the trip. And they said, wait a minute, you guys took an electric car to Crater Lake? So how many days were you gone? And she goes, no, we did it in a day. Like we just went down and came back. And the guy was just floored. How did you pull that off? And again, he's like, it's a car, I get it, but where'd you fill up at? I don't even understand how that's possible. And to that end, they have answered the question about filling up so well that you can buy that car with 100% confidence. And I mean, I have no concern about getting in our Tesla Model 3 and driving it to anywhere. Like really,
Yeah.
Like we've been to Canada. We've gone to middle of nowhere in Oregon, middle of nowhere in Idaho. We've gone to the redwoods. I mean, it's easy. And the beauty of it is that even with her Bolt, we could now do that with her Bolt. For the most part on the highway, it's covered in the Northwest where we live. But the difference is that her car can charge up to about level 4, whereas our Model 3 can go up to level 7. So
yeah.
that's the difference. Is we can.
That's the difference, and that's a thing that I can understand. Anybody can understand.
Yeah.
It's like, what's the difference between that? That's fast charges. Yeah, this one fast charges. Yes, but like, what is the difference? You just said it's 3 numbers in a scale of what? Of 1 to 7.
Yeah, currently 1 to 7. The beauty of it is we can keep expanding. So it's funny is when we first introduced Chargeway, urban superchargers didn't even exist. Is we basically just had this category of red was red 6 and red 7 maybe one day. And then they came out with urban superchargers like 3 months later, and I said, "Oh, look, red 5, boom, it works right perfectly, drops in."
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, your app needs to be in all the GM cars and all the Volkswagen cars and all the. Who else is making electric cars? You know what? It should be in the new Hummer. Did you know that there's a Hummer coming out? Electric Hummer?
The crab crawl and everything.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I might get a chance to review that, or I don't know what. Like they contacted me. I'm like, I haven't gotten back to them, but
hey man, give it. I would take it for a drive.
yes, I'm like, so the cool thing, I told them, I'm like, I'm a fan of SUV, utility vehicles. I mean, I drive a classic minivan. That's what I drive, right? I pre-ordered the Rivian, so I'm like, okay. I definitely want to see this Hummer. Like, I'm like, yes, I want to know details. So do you think that's going to be a CCS combo charging, right? Yeah.
Yeah, everything GM is going to be green for the charging standard, everything.
Green.
So, yep.
Green, is that one has a number? Green?
Yep, they all have numbers associated, so all of them can go basically. Yeah, green level 7 does exist. I mean, so that's all the GM stuff is probably gonna be green level 6 when it comes out. I mean, inevitably, again, flagship products like the Lyric that's coming from Cadillac, I could foresee them doing some really high end elements. It's like this is our top tier, so I could see some of those getting to level 7. But to your point, like level 6, which is like 150 kilowatt, that's still great.
It's good enough.
Yeah, I mean,
it's good enough
really
for
is.
most. Yeah. Although this is a big car, though, maybe not good enough for Hummer.
Battery size is going to matter. I think
yes.
if you get into that like 200 kilowatt hour battery size, then that's a big deal.
Yeah, level 5 is definitely not going to cut it. You're going to have to be at level 7 at the very least. Now you're going to have to come up with level 8.
Yeah.
What's going to be level 8?
Basically 401 kilowatt and higher.
Okay, so, 400.
Yeah. So, and we've been talking to a few groups that are doing medium duty and heavy duty trucking, and trucks are going to be putting out and needing a lot more power than what the light duty vehicles are. So inevitably our platform can be translated over into those vehicles as well. And depending on the plug type, it might be different colors. So that's another thing too, is if you might go to a truck stop that's for just trucks, then they have a completely different color plug. So,
but somehow with an adapter, you're like, your car can get. Because, here's the thing that I was looking at. The Tesla destination chargers, those are everywhere now, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, those are just plastered all over the place. And up until now, like really, you could only charge Teslas on them. Mm-hmm. Except there's nothing special other than the physical, dimension of the plug. Yeah. So they're starting to make adapters for them. So you can charge any Jade 1772 car.
Yeah. So there's a lot of the Bolt owners that I know, they have that adapter. And so what's interesting is Tesla, so their destination charger and the design of it. So they've always been putting, it's the Tesla brand, it's really sleek. And if they were doing a hotel installation, they might also put in a handful of Clipper Creeks. And so you'd have like 2 red 2s and 2 green 2s.
Okay.
But now they've developed out a Tesla. It looks like a Tesla like wall connector, but it has a J1772 connector on it.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, and so there's a few people we've seen. There's some in Ohio, some back east, a lot of them in Canada. So people are like, well, wait, why would Tesla do that? I'm like, well, they're just kind of looking what they can do to keep their branding up, but also every Tesla you can put basically a green 2 adapter in the glove box.
Yeah.
And so you can just say, oh, it's a Tesla destination charger. I've got my adapter. Boom. but it could also be used for a Bolt or a Mach-E or what have you.
Yeah. Wait, so you're saying Tesla's putting J1772?
Yep, it blew me away. So we actually have there's a winery here locally in Oregon.
What?
They put in Tesla destination chargers, and part of what we did here in Oregon is we actually we put Chargeway labeling on about 25% of the stations here in the state. So if you pull up to some of the fast chargers that are here in town, you will actually see on the station a green 4 and a blue 4 for the connector types. And
Okay, that's starting to happen already. Okay.
Yeah. So, and we've done that in Austin, Texas, with a team from Austin Energy. Same thing with the Vista Utilities in Washington. We've done some labeling in Hawaii. So it's growing.
Wow. Yeah, so, you guys are moving. You guys are getting there.
Yeah, but the first time I saw that Tesla thing was I walked up and I said, "Oh, cool! These are 2 red 2s." And so I pulled the red 2 out. I labeled the one, and then I went over to the other one. And I went, "Wait a sec," because it was just the connector was all big, and I went, and I grabbed it.
Yeah.
So
no
it's a green.
Way.
It's a green 2, but it looks like a Tesla wall connector. It's crazy. But that's why you need the labeling.
And that's manufactured by Tesla.
Yeah.
That's so weird. Yeah.
It is.
We kind of understand it, but it's well, I mean, I guess, there's a reason why Tesla did it, right? Like, because they don't want to, like Elon says, he just wants more electric cars. He doesn't care, I guess. Within reason, I guess.
Maybe. He still wants to sell cars. Yeah.
He still wants to sell cars. I think they're doing great. What do you think this battery day is going to be like?
Man,
you got any predictions for that?
It's tough, right? I mean, the Roadrunner project, for all the speculation, there was a few photos leaked of the battery cell that arguably will be used in it.
Yes.
I forget the dimension of it, but it's mammoth compared to...
It's like 4596 or 4587 or someone did a thing where they try to model it and they try to figure out the
I saw like a graphic image where it had like all the cells lined up and it was like this gigantic thing at the end.
Yeah, it's like smaller than a Coke can. Yeah, but
maybe like an 8-ounce Coke can, like the little guys. I mean,
like those small V8s. Yes.
Yeah, it's like more like this Perrier I'm drinking.
Yeah, there you go. A little shorter than that, half the height of that.
Yeah, I mean, but as for what they're going to present, I think it's going to be. I think the big announcements they're going to come up with, if it's the cell design, is something along the lines of energy. I mean, we'll see an energy density change. I think we'll see a material change. From both costs of production for materials as well as the cell design that will allow them to produce faster. I think that's probably a big part of what they're looking to announce. But then I'm curious about the energy density side of it and to what they'll be able to showcase for what they could do with a Model S, for example, with the footprint of the battery pack size. What could this new battery pull off for range and things like that? So
I think, I don't know, I've been reading about that whole thing, like the tablets design. They did a patent for that, right? And I think that's significant because I think so the battery the electron travel through the battery internal structures, they just cut it to almost nothing. Yeah. And what that's going to mean is that the internal resistance is going to go way down low. That means the power output of the cells is going to increase. Now, they don't need more power. Like those batteries, like an 80 kilowatt battery can do 400 kilowatts, no problem. And they don't need more than 400. Why do you need more than 400 kilowatts? Like, that's 800 horsepower. Like, you don't need more than that unless you're building supercars, which he is. But he could get that power through any other means. Like, he could use supercaps or whatever, you know? And I think that car that the Roadster that he's doing, that's going to have like 500 miles of range. So that means it's going to have a bigger battery.
Yeah.
Or a lighter, more energy-dense battery, right?
Yeah.
But that's so far into the future that I don't think he knows. I think he's just banking that the battery is going to be that advanced at that point, right? Because you're talking about years. I think that Roadster's coming up any time soon.
I mean, I think we'll be lucky to see it by end of next year because it wasn't speculated as a 2021, I think, maybe. But I think Again, it was interesting. So, like watching what Lucid presented, it felt very Tesla-esque when they did their whole.
Oh, that's right. I missed that. How did I miss that? I missed it. My wife just had surgery, so I was been out of it, kind of thing. But what was that? What did they show on the battery technology on that?
Well, it was interesting. I mean, it was a lot of glitz and a lot of flash. I think the Lucid Air is going to be a phenomenal car. But based on how they explained what they were able to pull off with the battery size, like it's 113 kilowatt hour, and what they're getting out of range, which is, they're saying over 500, that's wildly impressive. But to your point earlier, it's like that's a much bigger, heavier battery. What is it they're actually building into this battery design? I'll be curious to see how it compares what we see this coming week from the battery day for Tesla, even frankly compared to things like the Ultium battery announcement from GM, which didn't provide a heck of a lot of detail. It was a lot of, overarching plan, but not a lot of down in the weeds, like people like you that could just really dive into some of the specs and be like, is this groundbreaking, or is this just you're building batteries?
Yeah. I that's what I always tell people. Like, people think that Tesla's so advanced in their battery, and I'm like, no, they just have the biggest battery in the markets. Like, that's literally it. Like, that's why they could ask 600 horsepower out of that battery, because it's so gigantic. But by the way, they could put more battery into that same space by just eliminating the cooling system, and you could eliminate the cooling system or put a smaller system, because the only reason they need to cool that battery is when they're charging it. Because you're trying to basically put that energy back. The energy that it took for you to take it out of that battery, it took like 2-3 hours.
Right.
You're trying to put it back in 40 minutes or 30 minutes or something.
Right.
So the transfer is not the same. It's not equal. And that's why you need that super heavy, like hefty cooling system on that battery.
And I'm curious, just because the work that you do in your background as well, you kind of mentioned how the architecture of this new battery cell could arguably remove that, potentially. Yeah. I think that part of the design of what Tesla's batteries have been to date, utilizing the smaller cell size, is that you compare that to something that is kind of like an LG design, where it's more of like a sheet or a larger cell. There's a lot of surface area there for that heat. Now, the cooling systems, they run in and out of those as well. They're not passively cooled like a Leaf battery, for example.
No.
But but that's my curiosity has that been Tesla's ace in the hole? Is that architecture was really that interwoven system of cooling in the cells, and how it was able to manage that heat balance compared to some of these other batteries that's like, we really got to throttle this down because we don't have the ability to control the heat as well.
Yeah, like the prismatic cells that LG is using, they're so big, right? Well, not all of them. Some of them use those pouch type, and I think the reason they're doing that is because then, again, they could put one cooling fin between like 4 of them, and so you'd have a lot of big surface area to cool those. And the thing is that, like, GM doesn't have to cool them as well because they don't have as high charging, right? Now they're starting to with the new CCS combo that can charge up to 300 kilowatts. But again, there's no cars out there that are using that.
No, my wife's is, the Bolt is like 50 to, it peaks at 55 kilowatt. Okay. But in everything that we've ever seen is that those additional like 1 to 5 kilowatts are actually used for accessories when you're charging. So, on average, you're still getting far less than 50 kilowatt for a full session.
Yeah. So at 50 kilowatt charging on that battery, now it's a smaller battery, right? So if it was like a Tesla size battery, then you definitely would be nowhere near. So, but now since you are smaller, how big is that? Like 30 kilowatt hours?
On the Bolt?
Yeah.
It's 66.
Oh, 66. Okay. Yeah. So it's almost up there.
Yeah.
So 50 kilowatts is nothing. It's like 1C. It's 1C charging. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's not a lot. There's not a lot of heat being generated at 1C. No, like, unless you have some really cheap cells, really high internal resistance. Like, so the cooling system doesn't really need to be that crazy on that. And so that's why they can do like bigger pouch cells. Okay, and I think they're doing it, right? So, but with Teslas, they have 400 kilowatt discharging peaks, and everybody's taking off with that ludicrous if they can have it,
Well, and that's the argument from like Porsche when they developed the Taycan the way that they did, is they said, well, this is an 800, 900 volt system. And so they can maintain consistently launching again and again and again and again. Same thing with Lucid. That was their argument for their battery technology when they did their announcement for the Air. And again, I think that's cool. But then you have to ask yourself for the use case of what did they have to do to develop that out, and what exactly are they going to have to manage over time for how that battery responds to, again, higher level charging, higher heat. I thought it was interesting to find out, one of the questions I was asked long ago by an automaker about how to position explaining batteries and charging to consumers is I said, well, look, we always say charge to 80%, and that's basically going to get you down the road. And that last 20, we know it throttles hard. It's going to take longer to get to that 100. But consumers like knowing they get to full and 100.
Yeah.
And I said, my opinion is once the batteries are big enough that you can get decent enough range, 250, 300 miles, is basically tell them that full is 80% of that battery. And and if they really want to use that extra 20%, call it like battery reserve.
Yeah.
Make them feel like they got a benefit or something. Because if you do it that way, you're going to keep them in the range of what you want them to do for charging to protect the battery in the long term anyway. And it helps them feel like they're getting something extra. When in reality, you're actually just making it easier for them to understand how to do it the way we want them to.
Yeah.
So.
And General Motors pioneered that with the Chevy Volts.
Yeah.
That had 24 kilowatt hours, all right? But it only let us use 16. And when it said it was 100%, it wasn't really at 100%. It was 80%.
But I never knew that in our Volt. Like I said, first time I found that, I went, wow, well, so what's the point? And the point is with degradation and other details that you can keep expanding out into that cell. Mm-hmm. I mean, Audi's doing the same thing with the e-tron. I mean, I think that's essentially what Porsche's doing with the Taycan. And
I think Tesla's doing that, by the way, too.
Oh, no, Tesla
I think
totally
Tesla was doing that from the very beginning. Like when it says 0, it's not really 0. You can still drive another 20, 30 miles on those battery packs.
Yeah.
We found that the hard way when we were trying to brick a Tesla, like it wouldn't roll anymore just to see how many miles you can get. And then we hit 0 and we're like, yeah, we're there. And then like 2.5 hours later, we're still driving around. We're like, come on. We're going around circles in a parking lot.
You're like, would this thing just die?
This thing, we just couldn't make it die. We're like, come on. And it was a big battery. It was the P100D that we were testing.
Oh,
so it's like a huge battery.
I had one friend that worked at Tesla. He said the one time they really had to drain a battery, he said, yeah, we just basically, it was middle of summer. He's like, yeah, we just had to drive it hard as much as we could to get the thing to drain. But he's like, then I cranked on the heater because that's using way more than the AC. So but it was like 90 degrees out. So they're driving around with the heat pumping. And he's like, oh, we were sweating like crazy. He's like, but it worked.
It worked. Yeah. Yeah, because now you're using the AC to cool the battery because you have no control over that, right? Like the car's going to do that. But now you're using the heater too. So that's crazy. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I hope that I know Elon, he's going to release some cool stuff. I just don't know what it is. And I hate not knowing what it is.
Are you going to the battery day?
No. I'm not. I don't have an in with them, so they don't even invite me to the regular events.
I've never been to one, so it's kind of like, oh, you going? I think that, if anything, what I think that they continue to prove. Now, they did delay the battery day a lot. It was supposed to be June originally, I think, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So, and you can speculate all day whether that was COVID related or they just weren't ready or who knows. It'll be interesting to see, as you said, like, he's only really ever done like one of the Apple-esque, like one more thing moments when he unveiled the Roadster, the 2.0 Roadster.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, but again, this whole day is revolving around the technology
battery
for the most part. Yeah. So
it's battery day, it's called.
But I've got friends of mine talking about it. They're like, oh, isn't that Tesla battery day coming? They're talking about like it's a damn Super Bowl. I was like,
wow. I think most people don't know how exciting batteries are.
Yeah, that's true.
But you really think about it. I always like taking people like, look, you live around like 10 batteries. Mm-hmm. Like they live in your pocket, they're in your purse, they're underneath your pillow. you don't know. Like this is technology that you're using. It makes a huge difference in your daily life. Yeah. And this is about the most exciting thing that exists right now. It's just you don't know it because it's masked. It's underneath like a bunch of plastic and screens and right.
No, but it's that visibility of something that impacts their life basically constantly, and they just don't understand it. And by they, as you said, that's basically everybody. And it's kind of like something that we've had the ability to take for granted for decades, and now we're trying to get people to think a little bit differently about it. And to your point, like, it is damn exciting to see what is going on in that space. I've been, again, working on cars since I was a kid, And I will never forget, I was underneath my car. Again, I grew up in Southern California. I was, went to, LACR on Friday nights for grudge night. And I was, wrenching on my car one night as a kid in high school, and my dad and I were talking. He's an engineer. And he just casually said, he goes, by the way, in your lifetime, whoever makes the best battery is going to win. And I went,
wow.
and I'm under my car wrenching. This is back in the mid 90s. And I went,
wow.
What do you mean, Dad? And he said, honestly, and then he kind of walked me through the basics of it. And again, at the time, I just kind of shrugged it off like, oh, sure thing, Pops, whatever. But now when he and I have conversations about it, it's, he just gets to kind of chuckle because he's like, we're getting in there. It's getting real close. He's pretty excited to see it. But, that's
How did your dad know so early on?
Well, he just, as an engineer, he just looked at it for how do you make a car move? Is his take on it, and the way he explained to me when that conversation he and I had is he said, well, look, here's the thing, is if you can get a battery that's big enough yet light enough to put into a car that can hold enough energy that it will take a car the distance that people are accustomed to, and it'll be able to discharge that power in a way that is fun to drive, which batteries lend themselves to that, instant torque, things like that, and it can also accept a lot of power fast. That is the end game, because once you attach that with software to an electric motor, done. He's like, I was working on a turbo kit on my car at the time, and he's like, turbos are fun. Yeah, it adds boost to the car, and it makes it faster, and that's great. But if you want to go fast, you get the best damn battery and an electric motor. Boom. He's like, that's how you do it. And at the time as a kid, I was kind of like, yeah, but does it make that cool noise?
This is a grunt.
Yeah, exactly. So, but he just looked at it as an engineer, and he's actually the first person that I showed my initial concept for Chargeway to. I said, okay, I know as an engineer, you're going to be able to basically call BS on this if it doesn't capture enough of the right information for people to be effective in using it. And as I walked him through how to basically utilize the colors and numbers for identifying a car and then identifying a station and how that would work for AC and DC, etc., he just sat back and said, this is great because it does distill it down to the place where most people will be able to understand it. And if you need to dig into granularity, you can still offer it because it's built fundamentally off of engineering.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, I didn't think that was needed, but before talking to you, I was like, I don't know, why do we need some other thing on top of the thing, right? Like, but I get it. I totally get it. Like, I can step out of my head and then try to look at things from just the average Joe. And I'm like, if I was just a regular guy, I wouldn't want to care about what the volts and amps and the kilowatts and who cares about that stuff?
Right. Well, I had plenty of friends. All my buddies, when I first started getting into EVs, I was showing them all these details, and I had friends saying just that. They're like, you might love this, but I don't want to. I just need a car to be functional for what I do every day. And even as you go down the line of who makes a lot of shopping decisions, if you're going to go in with your family and buy a car, I mean, how many times will the husband walk in and be like, I want to get this thing, and 9 times out of 10 you'll see a spouse and a couple say, that's cute, you want that, but no, and we're going to get this other thing. So
this is what you want, but this is what we need.
Yeah, right.
And it's the minivan.
Yeah, exactly right. It's like, and it's got a sliding door.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I had to kind of decode my brain to get away from the complexities and the details of charging to help myself appreciate what I was just hearing, very candidly from friends and family. And that moment with my wife on that experience that we had where I thought I knew all of it and I screwed it up. But then when she really just drove it home, just saying like, look, you have to understand, average people, if you want everybody to drive an electric car, if you want to decarbonize the planet, if you want to change the carbon footprint, if you want to get to clean energy faster, they have to want to do it. And if you try to scare them straight or you try to force them to learn engineering when they have an option called regular, consumers and people are people.
Yeah, so, they're not going to want. They just want to be able to go fast and not have to worry about it. Yeah. Well, I think you're doing a great thing. I think I wish all the success to you, and people can download the app, obviously, right?
Yep. I mean, Chargeway is available, like I said, Android and iOS today. So download it, use it, enjoy it. Yeah, basically, once you download it, it just says, hey, add your car. Once you add your car, boom, you're off to the races. It shows you where your stations are, and you can plan a trip and go from there.
Yeah. So. Do you have Tesla users on there?
Oh, yeah. A lot of Tesla users.
A lot of Tesla users. Yeah.
So, in fact, the cool thing is we had to think about all the use cases for different vehicles, and Tesla's the only OEM that does offer adapters. And so basically you can go in and you can add your Tesla, and then in the filters you can say, well, I want to use my green 2 adapter. You just turn it on, you go back to the map, and then all the green 2s are on the map.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I see why people would say that you're like the other app, whatever, the one that I have installed. Charge. What is the other one that you mentioned earlier before?
Yeah. There's PlugShare. That's
Plug
the one
Share.
Yep. Again, they aggregate a lot of content from other networks, and then each network they have their own. ChargePoint has an app, Blink has an app, Electrify America has an app.
Yeah.
So yeah, but
that one I started using it because of the DIY thing, right? Because I was like at that time, I'm like, I don't care about any of these other standards. I want NEMA 1450. Show me where the NEMA 1450s are.
Yep.
And it turns out most of them are like in people's houses and stuff. And so
yeah, so that's what we've had people say to us. They're like, hey, like you guys don't list NEMA 1450s on Chargeway. And I said, yeah, that's an early adopter type approach to charging. It's the take all your cables with you and figure it out. Yeah. Average people, they need to know when they pull up, they can grab what they need and make it simple. So
they don't need to make a phone call and schedule a thing with the guy and kind of thing. That's what we had to go through in the early days. And that's why, when I'm driving my Tesla, I'm like, people don't know, like they don't know the magic that is happening here when you pull up to these modern supercharging stations, and you plug in that thing and you're like just getting them some crazy amounts of power. Like people don't know that you're basically putting what an average home uses in like 2 days, and you're doing it in 20 minutes.
Oh yeah,
and they don't get that. Like it's just like
it's mind bending how much power it is, and and the appreciation for that. To your point, is most people don't realize. Again, most people think that electricity is magic. They don't fundamentally understand how it works. And so when you explain it that way, like, oh yeah, we just filled up, and the amount of power that my car just got is the amount of power that your house uses in 2 days.
Yeah.
Then the next time they're turning on lights and turning on the dishwasher and blow drying their hair, TV's on, computers are on, they might kind of get a sense for, wow, that's a lot of power.
Yeah. And then once you step out of your car and then you look like at 20 cars and they're all charging at the same time, you're like, whoa.
Wow,
that's a lot of power.
2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Like, what's that new supercharger that's going on I-5? It has 56, level 7.
56, yes.
I was like, whoa, that's crazy. So, but again, this is where I give all the credit to the engineers that have worked for the last decades to get us to where we are, and to the early adopters that were craving getting us to to market with other products. I mean, they really have pushed everything to where we are today, and I consider myself one of those. And at the same time, I want to have everybody loving electric cars. I want to have every dealership saying, these are easy to sell now. We're not going to try to just put you into a gas one because we can explain charging real easy. I want all my friends to say, oh, I get it now, man. Like, I can fill up at home and it's pretty cheap and easy, but I can go on the highway and find a level 6 or 7 and it's super quick when I'm on a road trip.
Yeah.
Get people to that comfort zone is where I wanted, because my goal with Chargeway was to truly accelerate the conversation with average people so we could create more comfort and more understanding around all these technical details so that we could actually expand and grow the market faster and prove that we have a good argument for it. So
yeah, well, I think you guys are doing great, doing good work. And I hope all your success to you guys, and I can't wait till I get to see your app in one of the cars, maybe in that Hummer.
Hey, well, again, when you get a chance to drive it, part of your review of that can be like, you know what this thing needs?
Yes. It needs the color chart in here. Where I
charge Chargeway right by the crab mode.
Yes, there you go. I mean, look, you're not far away, right? I think it's a thing that they need, and I think they're open to. That's the cool thing about the other manufacturers. I love Tesla, but it's like Apple. They're a closed system. There's not a lot of stuff. But everyone else is kind of open, and I mean, saying that you're going to be in the next whatever manufacturer's car, it's not a crazy thing to say. I mean,
Well, we're having the conversations, and it's a big conversation. I mean, we're trying to help a lot of different industries and a lot of companies that are huge. But I think we've painted the picture where a lot of them are seeing the benefit and the value now for what we offer. So the big thing for us is obviously is those owners that are out there that are just as passionate as I am. It might be a different conversation from what you've been used to for all the details, but it's what your friends and family and other people that you want driving electric cars, it's what they really do need.
It's what they need.
the more that we can get support for that, the faster we can all get more people behind the wheel of electric cars. So.
Yep. Well, we're rooting for you, Matt, because we're also like the advancement of this technology. And, I want more electric cars. Yep. I want to breathe less crap.
Here in Portland and here in Oregon for the last 2 weeks, and everybody in California that's been facing the biggest devastation of forest fires ever on the West Coast.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Today was the first day it rained in Oregon in 12 days. It finally rained. I walked outside and stood in it like it was a bad scene from a movie. I just stood there saying, okay, this is great. It's cool and it's raining. Thank God. Because it's been crazy here for the last 12 days. We just run a blanket of just smoke and you couldn't go outside. You couldn't breathe. And, we've got some big challenges that we have to actually to face as a species. Yeah. And again, my core focus in focusing on Chargeway was I'm a car guy. I love cars. But I appreciate and recognize that as a product and as a thing, cars were a big part of the problem. But getting from where you want to go, getting from where you are to where you want to go, point A to point B, that's not a problem. We can do that with clean energy. We can do that with electric cars. But we just have to make it so that everybody is successful. And to your point about Tesla, Tesla's done a great job. They've set the bar really high. But I want to see every single brand succeed that is going to be a part of electric cars, whether that's a network or an automaker, you name it. And that means we get more consumers to have more options because not everybody wants to buy just one electric car.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's Tesla's given us a little bit of choices there, but essentially, if you don't like that shape, you're kind of stuck with it, right? They all kind of look the same. But with Rivian, it's you're finally getting a little bit of difference, right? I have a pre-order on both of those, so I can't wait to get my hands on those. So
the R1S and the R1T?
Yes, I basically want to be because I signed up as soon as I saw them come up. So I think I'm really early in the pre-order thing. So I want to be able to be one, early review and then the other thing is I don't really want truck. I'm more into the SUV, and I know that's the second one. So I think the truck, all I'm going to do is I'm going to put it up on Turo so people can get to test drive it before they can order it, right? Because the thing with these ones is you can't test drive them before they come out, right? So if you can rent one to test it for the weekend, you're like, okay, this is a cool vehicle. Let's order one, And so at least I could probably get some people figure out if that's what they're going to want to do. But I think so. I think this is going to be amazing cars. I've had a chance to see them firsthand a couple times, and they seem like they're pretty amazing cars.
Oh, yeah. I think Rivian, I think they're the real deal. And I think that they're going to, again, it's a conversation that we had to have here in the States, which is Tesla's done a great job, but there's a lot of people that want SUVs and trucks. Yeah. And I think they took their time to get to where they said, okay, now we're going to come to the public and say, here's what we're doing. And I finally got to see them in person at Fully Charged Live too. And fully impressed. And those options are what people need. And, it's if you're going to give people the option to go drive a Rivian truck on Turo, hell yeah, man. I mean, once you get it, let me know. I'll do it.
Yeah. We'll bring you down here. Hopefully the world is not going to be so crazy next year. Hopefully 2020 ends at the end of 2020 and it doesn't carry over to 2021 because that's going to be really suck.
Oh yeah. I'm done with whatever this year has tried to be. It's let's just move along, please.
Yeah, man. It's refuel coming next year, right? Because I'm this year wouldn't it? Wait, was it scheduled this year? No, it was this year, but it was right at the beginning of it. By the way, did you put a mask when you went there? I think I was about one of the only ones that wore a mask on my way to not refuel.
At Fully Charged Live.
Fully Charged Live, yeah.
At the time, because that was basically February-ish, mm-hmm. And when I was traveling back from Texas, that was the first time I saw someone wearing a mask. I had a layover in Los Angeles. And
yeah.
And I remember thinking oh, that's interesting. And then I had one meeting and trip after that was actually on the East Coast. And when I came back from that, it was early March, and then it was really obvious that more people were wearing masks. So
it was crazy. I was like, I'm gonna get in a plane to go to Texas for this thing. let's get a mask. So me and my wife got masks, and I thought we're going to be the only ones at LAX with masks. I mean, there's a lot of people at LAX that have masks. I mean, like, I want to say like 20% of the passengers on our flight to Texas had masks.
Well, again, I didn't expect it to go that fast, but yeah.
Yeah. So. And then once we got to Texas, no one was wearing masks over there. So we took them off. We're like, okay, we don't want to be the weirdos, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. But again, and little did we know that it was just kind of like, oh, this is going to last a while. You know?
I mean, if you were to ask me, I would have bet my life that it was not going to last this long. There's no way. Like, it's crazy.
It's just been one thing after. I mean, my wife's been working from home for the last 6 months. Like most people, they just had to figure out how to transition it, you know. And yeah, I mean, this year, it's just the last 6 months has been a really long decade.
Yeah.
I mean, it has been so much at one time, and I think coming out of it, again, a lot of us are gonna be worn out by it. I mean, psychologically, emotionally. I mean, this has been crazy.
We're waiting for the end of it, and it's just there's no light at the end of the tunnel, kind of thing.
Right. Like, it's like, yeah, what is that moment? Yeah. It's and I've got friends who are like, oh man, I can't wait till 2021. This year's got to end, and I'm like, I agree, but it makes me nervous because I'm like, yeah, the Earth doesn't understand December 31st.
But I think our psyche does. I think that will like, you know what? Like, I think because there's everything, right? Like, there's the crazies on both sides of this thing. Okay. And then, well, I like to consider myself in the middle, like not crazy, right? But I think hopefully most of us are like, look, we give this better part of a whole year. That's it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, let's not act weird anymore. Like,
right.
We know there's, you know, infectious diseases out there. They're dangerous. You know, but let's just not change our lives because of that kind of thing.
I think most people are pretty much, like you said, like, they're in the middle. They're feeling normal about it. I think the loudest voices are usually the ones that are the most extreme, oftentimes. You know, and I think a lot of people, whether we're talking about here in the U.S. or just anywhere else, I think a lot of people are just kind of like, can we just, you know, it's just get back to just having it be not about bouncing the ping pong off of each end of the conversation.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I think we are there more than we're not. Only because if you have conversations with anybody that's outside the realm of social media and things like that, oftentimes you find that it is actually a much more balanced conversation if you actually listen to each other.
Yeah.
That's tough. And I think again, you know, we're going to be on YouTube, right? I mean, it's a great way to get the word out about a lot of important things. But this conversation we're having here at the end is also very important about how do we have conversations in general about how we move forward on things, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we got to be positive about it anyway, because at the end of the day, we don't have a choice. We have to move forward.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I hope to see you at Charge Live this next year. It's going to be again in Austin, Texas. Mm-hmm. Which now is changed because Austin, Texas now is going to be a home base for Tesla. How crazy is that?
That's bonkers. I mean, the Austin Energy team that we work with, I saw the announcement. I just sent an email. I was like, guys, gals, congrats. This is, and they just kind of said, well, you know, we're not going to take credit, but we're excited as hell.
That is crazy. So I remember driving through that site where it's going to be. Like, we all drove through there, right? It's like right there. And I was like, never that it crossed my mind that was going to be the new Tesla plant there. You know, it's like no one knew, right?
Well, and
someone
if you think
knew,
about,
maybe.
Well, yeah. I mean, who could have guessed that they just kind of kept? Oh, we're going to build another gigafactory. We're going to build another gigafactory. And if you rewind, even when they first started building a gigafactory in Nevada, it's like, oh yeah, this is going to be a big deal. But very quietly, it's like, oh, the one in China went up like boom. The one in Berlin, near Berlin in Germany, is going up really quick too. The Austin one, they broke ground and it's been moving fast. So to your point, it's almost like the battery thing. It's like, you guys don't realize that batteries are part of your life every day, and you just don't realize it. And it's almost the same thing of like what Tesla's been doing. It's like, we didn't realize how fast it was going, but that's where the other companies get a chance to also, you know, prove and show what they're going to do too, whether that's startups like Rivian and Lucid or GM, you know, flexing their muscles. So this is an exciting time for EVs. That's the best part.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, definitely. This is when all the other, like, real EVs are going to start coming out. Because I know this past years, you know, I've gone to the auto shows, you know, LA Auto Show and stuff, and I've even got some, I got some access to be able to, like, review some of the cars. And I was like, to tell you the truth, I'm not really excited about any of these cars offerings that are out there. So it's like, but I think now it's gonna be that time, right? Like with Rivian, with even GM, it's coming up with some cool cars now.
Yep.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. And yeah, I can't wait to see you there next year. You're planning to go, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, if they'll have me back, I mean,
Yeah.
I got the chance to be on a panel and again share my insights on some things, but we also had Chargeway there to just show people, hey, this is how easy it can be, because Fully Charged Live did bring in a lot of people that were not early adopters. It did bring in, because Rivian was there was a lot of people that were Rivian reservation holders that said, hey, I don't know anything about EVs.
Gotta go
I just
check
like
it
that
out.
truck. Yeah, I just like that truck or that SUV. So that was fun. And again, the more we can have moments like that and grow events like that, the better. So,
We got to put one of those here in California because there's no. Well, actually, we did have one that was canceled. It was in June 6th. We were supposed to have the EV show right by. Do you know those guys from EV West?
Oh yeah, I've met a few of them, but yeah, they do some awesome stuff.
So they in that same area where they're at in California and Southern California, like San Diego area, they had one, and the year before was so much bigger than the previous year, and this year was supposed to be so huge, and it just got derailed by COVID-19. So damn.
There's another one. The Electrify Expo. It's planned for Southern California, and I think they're currently planning one for New York, inevitably for 2021. It was supposed to happen this fall, and I know the guys that are managing it, and they get big plans. These are guys I've known in the car industry forever that said, there's an opportunity to make some good electric car events, and so that's another one that's on the radar that I'm glad that I knew about in advance, and hopefully we just keep seeing more stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm hoping. Yeah, something close to home. I mean, I don't mind going to Texas. I love that city. That's amazing. Every time I go there, it's fun, right? So,
Yeah,
and
Austin's
then,
great.
And everybody's moving there. It's so crazy.
Well, again, you're in California still. I mean, I moved out of California 13 years ago.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was kind of like my family's from the Northwest, so I was comfortable with being, in the Portland area. I'd visited it, but I grew up in California. My hometown was Lancaster. I was up in the desert,
Lancaster, yeah.
But there's a lot more people now that are just kind of like, oh, I'm moving to Austin or Portland or Boise, Idaho. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's kind of crazy down here, and it's expensive to live here. So, yeah, you never know. I'm like, I used to say I'd never move to Texas at all, but now I'm like, maybe.
Hey man, they got Toyota to move there. That's no joke.
Yeah. So Joe Rogan just recently, right?
So did he finally move?
He's there now.
Oh wow.
He's there. Yeah, he's there. He's doing his podcast thing, and I'm starting my podcast. So I'm like, hey, maybe I'll go over there. No.
Yeah, that's a secret recipe. You're like, and if I go to Austin, boom.
No big deal. Yeah, I mean, no, definitely. I'm like, in the future, I'm open. Like, it's a cool town. I love the openness of it. Yeah, definitely. Like, I don't like all the rules here in California as much. It's getting crazy here.
California is still beautiful. But it's also there's a lot of people.
There's a lot of people.
It sometimes can feel difficult to. I felt when I was like, maybe I should try living somewhere else. It was hard to get your feet planted because there's a lot going on. But that the people that make it through that also are the ones that sometimes shine the brightest. So I don't know. I mean, but also you got to live where you want to be happy. You know, or what will make you happy. It does. I mean, the beauty of now is digitally you can do a podcast. You can do a lot of work from wherever you want.
Yeah, and then in the early parts of your life, you're in the hustle. The later parts of your life, you're like, you want to be happy. You want to be, not where all the craziness is at, right? Like, yeah. So, I think, I'm getting older and stuff, so I'm starting to think a little bit different. So, yeah, definitely it's important. It's not as important to be in California as it once was. So.
No, that's fair. I mean, I was the same way, So, but it's again to your point. It's phases of life, part of going through it, And I find myself just looking for experiences more than anything anymore. And that's why, things like COVID have been so difficult. It's just that, we're social creatures. We want to be around each other, It's absolutely bonkers watching the NBA or the NHL or football with no one in the stands.
No one in the stands.
Yeah.
That's not normal. Yeah, I hope all ends this year.
Yeah, exactly.
Come on, 2020, end. Well, thank you for joining me. It's been a real pleasure talking to you and learning about you and your company. I wish I would have talked more to you at Charge, Fully Charged. Yeah, at Fully Charged. Because now I remember where I met you. You were in that restaurant that we were all together at there.
Yeah, I had like that open patio seating area.
Yes, and I remember saw you, and I'm like, oh, who is this guy? Who is this guy? No, there's so many.
Why is J.J. Abrams here?
Yes, there's so many guys there. There's so many people, and they're all in this industry, and I got to talk to so few of them. It's crazy. But here's the thing. I don't know if your experience is the same at Fully Charged Life. I was talking like all day. For all the 3 days that we were there, like there's no time where you're just like downtime. It's like, and there's a lot of people that knew me and I didn't know. It's like just a weird thing to go and where everybody like comes up to you and they say hi, like they know you, like we're all friends from childhood or whatever, and you're like, I have nothing. Who are you? I don't know who you are. It's like, but it was pretty exciting. It was pretty nice, and I kind of saw a bunch of people that I kind of recognized from either videos or stuff, but I didn't get a lot of chance to talk to them. And I remember seeing your face there. I'm like going like, oh, who's this guy? I got to say hi to him, but didn't have a chance to. But here we are later, right?
Again, the beauty of it is it's a small world, and the industry also is still kind of small. So I think it was it Joseph at Smart Charge America that mentioned like me to you guys. I forget who it was.
I think it was Joseph. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, that's the awesome part is the more you get a chance to meet people in this space, you just get to have awesome conversations about the expertise that everybody has. And there's a lot that goes into making this industry function.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, there's a lot of personalities and people that, like you said, like the people that come up and they talk to you like they know you because they've seen every single one of your videos.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, cool, appreciate it. Who are you again?
Yes. I'm like, oh, let me tell you the story. He's like, I can't tell them nothing because they already know everything.
Right.
I'm like, I got no stories to tell them. Right. And I'm like, oh. And so they're asking me questions and they know everything about me. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. Like,
it's the weird part about how YouTube can, the reach of social media, and when you use it in a way that you can educate people, help them have fun, learn something, but then they meet you and it's like, oh, there's somebody behind that video too. Because, everything that you've done too and everything that I've done in my career thus far, there's a lot more to all of us. And that's, to me, that's the fun part, is stuff like Fully Charged Live, and just you get a chance, or even conversations like this, you really get a chance to talk about, EVs and batteries and charging, but there's a bunch of other stuff that can come up too that's like, well, we all still need to have this.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Yeah, this was a chance for me to have those conversations because, like, my regular videos are just battery technology, and it's just one way, me, what I know and what I think, my opinion and stuff. But I'm like, what about everyone else? And so that's why I started this podcast. And I wanted it not just to be talking about batteries. I was kind of getting tired of talking about batteries all the time. Like, what about all the other stuff in life? You know what I mean? Like, that is related. There's a lot of stuff that is related to tech and stuff, but
you've had some diverse guests already. I mean, you had I know Nikki from Transport Evolved really well.
Yeah.
But even after like watching successive shows you've already done with other guests, it's like, you're opening up conversations that it goes beyond just battery and tech, because at the end of the day, that's not all you do.
Yes.
And
it's a tiny portion of my interest. I'm like,
right.
But it's one of the most successful ones, so I kind of understand. But after a few years, you're like, come on.
Oh, yeah. No, it's funny because anytime I get a chance to be on podcasts and things like this, my wife, she's like, oh, what are you guys going to be talking about? But she almost says it jokingly. She's like, you'll be talking about charging, won't you?
Yes.
Like, well, maybe a little.
Maybe.
So, maybe.
I mean, we talked a little bit about it, and then we moved on to world events.
Oh, yeah. Well, again, no hiding from that. We can't just be like, and this is a normal day.
Yeah.
It's like, there's a lot that we're all, anybody that's going to get a chance to watch this and hopefully learn something, but also be inspired to think like, everybody's still human. Like, we've all got to be grappling with this, whether it's here in Oregon and the fires, and as is in California, COVID, things like that. It's, this has been a hell of a last 6 months. It just has. Even the idea that I was a really good friend of mine, he's like, I can't believe that Kobe passed away this year. And I was like, That was this year.
Holy crap! Okay, yes.
Yeah, and it's just like, God, that feels like it was forever ago. And
yeah,
it's that kind of stuff that I don't. I mean, I've got a lot of life left, but man, this has been a challenging last 6 months. And like I said, we'll all get through it. And a big part of that is going to be some of the stuff that you're working on, some of the stuff that I'm working on, but also the other stuff we've talked about. So,
yeah, definitely. Yeah, and there's a lot of people that are still watching these things, just to it's so easy to add negative things to the already craziness that's happening, but it's hard. I think it's hard to stay positive, and so this is one of my ways that I'm like, let's talk about something positive, not just the craziness.
Honestly, that's awesome, and that's why I appreciate you reaching out to me to have the conversation, because I enjoy this stuff so much, because I get to have a conversation with someone who, I saw him, I kind of know who he is, but again, getting to know you more and the opportunity to see where you'll take what you're doing with this platform. You reach a lot of people, and so those conversations about tech and batteries matter. But what else can you talk about that more people could be thinking about? And if I can get a window into being a part of that too, that's super fun for me. So,
yeah. Maybe in the future we'll have you again. I want to talk to you more about we didn't talk at all about the journey that it took for you to set up this company and to get as far as you're going, right? Like, people are interested in, like, how do you do the thing that you do? That's one of the questions that I get a lot. Like, how do you do this? Like, how do you play with batteries every day and, like, make a living out of it? And then you're like, well, that's the whole conversation. This is what you try. These are, the strategies that you try and stuff. I've always wanted to know what it is, the journey that it is maybe to make an app, right? And then get users and get, like, I'm sure that hasn't been easy, right? That's a whole conversation that we can have one day.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'd be happy to have it. It's an adventure. Again, I didn't seek to develop out a software platform when I first started working on Chargeway. But it led to that. And it's, educational for one, but also it's like, wow, where can we take this? And I've always had, an entrepreneurial spirit. I've had other ventures I've tried and done. And part of it is, if you got an idea, again, it sounds corny, but it's like, you have to try. Yeah. It's not the easiest thing in the world. But I mean, frankly, I give a lot of credit to some YouTubers that are scared to death about being on camera, but they want to try something. And they put themselves out there in a way that is, it's a passion project, whatever it might be. You still have to try, because nothing gets done by sitting and thinking about it and hoping it'll turn into something one day. You have to put the effort in. Yeah. And I'd be totally happy to come back and talk about the journey that it's been for developing Chargeway, because it's been one. So.
And it's very, like, there's a thing that I can't, like, at events like Fully Charged, when you talk to people, you realize, like, whatever you're doing, whether it's a failure or a success in your eyes, it helps other people, right? It inspires other people, and that's a huge thing, right? So I'm like, if anything you can offer the world, at least inspiration, that's a thing that goes really far, and it's appreciated by many people.
It's huge. I had a conversation with another YouTuber the other day, actually. His younger guy, and I don't want to promote another YouTuber while I'm talking to you, but he even said, he's like, I wanted to start something because I care about climate change. I care about getting people to do something that is better for their life, but will be better for other people's lives in the future. And I said, do you understand how commendable that is? That it might seem altruistic, but it's that Steve Jobsian element of, like, it's the people that think that they can change the world. They're crazy enough to think they can. They're the ones that normally do. Yeah. And it's true. And again, little conversations like this, who knows? Someone might be more inspired by any amount of video that you put out for people that you bring onto your podcast and things like that. All of this matters. And I'm so in my work sometimes and working on things, I forget how important these conversations are, to just have an open, candid conversation about something I'm working on, but also something that could be, as you said, be inspiring. Yeah. And that matters in a huge way. So so to those listening, if you have an idea, Go
for it. Try it.
Try it. You might be on a podcast one day talking about how you almost met somebody who's talking to you on the other side of the camera. It's like, we were standing next to each other. So,
yes. All right. Well, Matt, thank you for joining me. And we'll have you again. Like I said, we'll talk about it a little bit. Plug in you have a website?
Yeah.
Or your socials, maybe, that people want to go and talk to you and you know.
Yeah, so it's just chargeway.net, simple website, and then every social media channel, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn is just Chargeway.
Chargeway,
So,
okay.
Yep, it is what it is. It's the way you charge.
And
Chargeway.
download the app.
And download the app.
Available in both platforms.
Yep, yeah, iOS and Android. You can download it. Again, always interested to talk more drivers to hear what questions they've got, get feedback. Yeah, and again, you can add as many cars to your Chargeway account as you want. So even if you're shopping for an EV, we've had people tell us that. They're like, I added 4. I planned road trips with all 4 and helped me understand which one was best for me.
That's so crazy. Look at that. So that's useful if you're planning to buy, even if you don't have an electric car right now and you plan to buy, if you put them in there, you could tell which one's better suited for you and your use case, right? Like, yeah, that's interesting. You should see. People don't know this. I didn't know this, so maybe I would have done that.
We talked about a lot of different things, and for Chargeway, again, it's meant to make charging easy, and we wanted to build in the functionality that made it easy for someone who just picks it up the first time. Yeah. And if you make charging and your electric fuel safety net very easy to visualize for every car you decide to look at, it helps you build confidence in that you have choices, and then you can go through the options to find out which is the best choice for you. So.
Yeah, well, that's good work. Definitely rooting for you guys. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for joining me again, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks.
Bye.